Chapter 301. Attacking indiscriminately. Seeing Fujin attacking him again, Jin retreated. Fujin was about to give chase when the loud explosion sound was heard, attracting everyone's attention. Seconds later, dust and smoke covered the entire area. Some debris also fell. The Awa ninjas took the chance to retreat and regroup, as the sensors on Fujin's side were shocked. Fujin looked towards the spot of the explosion and thought, the chakra of all 5 of them disappeared, and what's with that massive chakra? Even Hiruzen's chakra wasn't as high as this. Although Fujin's first mission as the Ambu captain had failed, he had no time to think about it. He was more concerned about the chakra that the ambusher was emitting. Jin looked at the destruction and sighed. We had to resort to this. Now everyone will know that it was Igawatga who did the attack. This will be a diplomatic disaster. He turned his attention towards his bleeding arm. His expression became determined as he thought. But that's fine. Though we will lose our influence in the land of grass, we found out about this fearsome Ambu from Konoha. I don't recall any powerhouse in Konoha having such skills, so he should be someone who they raised after the last Great War ended. Killing him will be far more beneficial. Suddenly, Jin's eyes widened and he looked in front only to see a sword heading straight at him. He instinctively moved backwards but knew that he had no chance of avoiding the attack. Having sensed a formidable foe, Fujin didn't want to leave any other trouble behind him. Fujin's blade was just a few inches away from Jin's neck when he sensed molten rocks headed towards him. Fujin flickered backwards and fired a few vacuum bullets at Jin. Jin barely managed to dodge them. They created a few cuts on his body, causing him to lose even more blood, but none were fatal. However, Fujin had no time to look at him. A figure rushed towards him at rapid speed. Fujin shot a few vacuum bullets, but he dodged them all. His fist began glowing red as he punched Fujin. Chakra began flowing along Fujin's sword as he slashed at the incoming punch. The sword and the fist clashed, creating a slight shockwave. Fujin's expression behind his mask became serious as his sword couldn't cut into the fist. The punch sent him flying backwards. He flipped in the air and landed back on the ground but was still dragged behind for a few minutes. His eyes landed on the ninja who attacked him. He had red hair, mustache and beard. Unlike the other Awa ninjas, he didn't bother hiding his identity. He wore a large headpiece that proudly displayed the symbol of Igawatga. On seeing his face, Ryochi and the other Kuza ninjas were horrified. Even Fujin's team raised their guard to the max. Ryochi asked in disbelief and horror, Roshi, why did Igawatga send someone like you? Roshi ignored his question and looked at Fujin. He said, youngsters these days are getting even more ferocious. You forced me to take action. Fujin cursed in his mind. Shit, if I knew someone like him was hiding here, I wouldn't have wasted time dealing with the rest. So if I did that, he might have jumped in sooner. But why the hell is Onoki sending his Jinhoki on a mission? It's an absolute taboo during peacetime. Even their own citizens don't trust them, let alone citizens of other countries. Fujin roared. Igawatga, you dare send your Jinwekarik to the land of grass? Do you intend to start a war? Fujin used his chakra to amplify his voice. It was so loud that everyone in Mikostuo heard it clearly, though most didn't know what a Jinwekarik was. Knowing that the ambushers weren't rogue ninjas and instead were from Igawatga terrified them. As for the ones who knew what a Jinwekarik was, their fear knew no bounds. Panic spread through the city. Some hid in underground safe houses in the city. A few began escaping from the city. Some officials sent messenger birds to Kusagaku without consulting or even informing Tomoki. Roshi realized Fujin's intention and said, I'm surprised that you are still thinking about diplomacy at this point. Fujin ignored him and instructed, slaughter the rest, I'll deal with Roshi. His earlier rampage had killed 4 more Awa ninjas, including Chiharu, who was the second most powerful in that group and could restrict Ryochi. More importantly, he had gravely injured Jin. Igawatga only had 6 ninjas along with an injured Jin, so the Ambu and Kuza ninjas shouldn't have any issue in dealing with them. Roshi asked, you think you can do? His words were cut short as Fujin flickered next to him and shot air bullets from a close range. Roshi immediately dodged and counterattacked. A lava release scorching rocks jutsu. Roshi expelled a large amount of lava that solidified into molten rocks. They traveled towards Fujin with tremendous force. Fujin ran straight towards the incoming molten rocks. Displaying blinding speed, he avoided all molten rocks. The molten rocks hit his afterimages and exploded on contacting the ground. Roshi's eyes widened. He muttered, so fast. He slammed his hand on the ground. Lava release volcanic swamp jutsu. The ground around him began turning into a swamp that had lava mixed within it. He severely restricted Fujin's movements if he wanted to close the distance. However, instead of approaching him, Fujin jumped a long distance in the sky while building a large amount of chakra and inhaling a large amount of air. Wind Release Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. Roshi began preparing a fire jutsu to take advantage of the wind jutsu, but stopped midway as his eyes widened in surprise. He thought, what is he doing? Ryochi had just begun fighting Jin when they both stopped and looked above. Ryochi's eyes widened. Even Yugo, Fumito and Buniro were surprised and scared. A second later, a strong wind current engulfed the entire battlefield. Enemies and allies both felt the tremendous wind flow. Even the Ide family ninjas on the opposite bank felt the massive wind current. The winds caused the river water to flood the opposite bank. They immediately retreated back into Mikosuo and activated their protective seals. Layers of lava walls formed around Roshi, protecting him from the winds. Several wind blades hit it every second, causing it to crumble, but it reformed itself at an even faster pace. He thought, though my fire nature should have an advantage, the winds are so strong that everything will be reflected back to me. But what is he planning? Does he want to kill his own allies as well? Since when did Konoha become so ruthless? At the same time, Jin was horrified. He thought, this bastard is definitely Danzo's successor. He'd kill his allies as well rather than letting any of us escape. A similar fear ran through the minds of the Kuza ninjas. After all, they had no idea who Fujin was and what his intentions were. Even Yuga, Fumito and Buniro had solemn expressions. Even though they were his subordinates, none of them had worked with him earlier or knew what missions he undertook. Suddenly, the Awa ninjas in front of them were attacked by wind blades. Long cuts appeared on their bodies. The Awa ninjas dodged while the Kuza and Konoha ninjas were afraid that they too would suffer the same fate. But they soon noticed something odd. They realized, the wind blades are only attacking the Awa ninjas. Though we are facing the extreme winds as well, they don't pose much threat to us. Roshi noticed it as well. His eyes widened and pupils dilated. He realized, this level of control, his control over yin-yang, should be excellent. This isn't a blind attack. He can perfectly control his jutsu. He wants to kill all Awa ninjas so that they won't interfere with our fight. Realizing that they were safe, the Kuza and Konoha ninjas began attacking Awa ninjas. The Awa ninjas immediately fell into peril. A red coating of chakra appeared around Roshi as he rapidly weaved hand signs. Chakra and lava gathered on his right fist as he punched the ground with full force. Immediately, the lava and chakra were released into the swamps he created earlier. The ground around him raised 10 meters in height, forming a miniature volcano. The lava began gathering towards its mouth. Lava Release Flower Fruit Mountain Jutsu. The miniature volcano exploded with a loud sound. It sent a shockwave in the surrounding area, nullifying the winds Fujin had created. Following the shockwave, a large amount of molten rocks was launched into the air. However, since the Awa ninjas were also in the vicinity, Roshi controlled it to fall far away from the battlefield. One of the molten rocks fell on Mikosuo town. It hit the protective barrier and broke it with ease. Fortunately, it hit the wall and didn't fall in the town. The wall crumbled in an instant. The people who still hadn't hidden underground were horrified by the sight. Chapter 302. Contemplating the situation, Roshi gathered chakra once again and shouted, retreat. A lava release fiery rock bullet jutsu. He spat a single rock made of molten lava at Fujin, who was falling down from the sky. Fujin gathered chakra as well. Wind release vacuum cannon jutsu. The vacuum cannon hit the lava rock and broke through it and traveled towards Roshi. Roshi didn't dare test his defenses against the wind vacuum attacks. He immediately dodged. The vacuum cannon hit the miniature volcano Roshi built earlier and crumbled it down. Fujin wasn't sure whether Roshi could use the same jutsu through it. He didn't want to see whether he could or not. He landed on the ground and instructed, chase and kill them off. The Awa ninjas had already begun escaping. Fujin's allies were wondering whether they should aid him or chase the Awa ninjas. Hearing his command, most of them began chasing the Awa ninjas. Seeing what Roshi could do, none of them wanted to face him. Only Ryochi and Yugo stayed behind. Yugo looked at Fujin and recalled the words Hiruzen had said to her before she joined Fujin's team. She analyzed, if he kills Iwa's Jinwekirik, then it could cause a war between Konoha and Iwa. The best solution is to disengage now and let them retreat. But how do I tell him that? And what would be the optimal route if that Jinwekirik decides to keep chasing after us? Ryochi had similar thoughts. Konoha could afford to offend Iwa, but they couldn't. He said, Kagama Noriekuis is already dead. Let's stop here and leave. Fujin and Roshi were about to begin their battle but halted on hearing that. A frown appeared behind Fujin's mask. He pointed at Roshi and said, "Tell him that." Roshi thought for a few seconds and replied, "Sure, Kuza ninjas can leave, but Konoha will have to pay for killing so many of our ninjas." Ryochi was stunned by his words. He immediately fell into a dilemma. If he escaped, then the remaining Kuza ninjas would live. If he stayed and Fujin lost, then they could all be wiped out. A frown formed on Yuga's face as she stared at Ryochi. Fujin didn't say anything. He decided that if Ryochi withdrew, he would run away as well, and after he gets away from Roshi, he would hunt them down and pin the blame on Iwa. After all, an entire town had seen them fighting Iwa ninjas. Ryochi let out a sigh and said, "Then I have no choice but to continue fighting." He immediately left and began chasing the escaping Iwa ninjas while thinking, "Although we can't afford to offend Iwa, they are the ones who attacked us in our country. If I escape, then we will offend Konoha, while Iwa would think that they can bully us whenever they want to. In that scenario, our country will be doomed." Roshi frowned and was about to flicker towards Ryochi when Fujin suddenly appeared in front of him and swung his sword at him. Roshi dodged and attacked back. Both began fighting. Though Yuga wanted to retreat, seeing Roshi's unyielding attitude, she understood that there was no other option. She shouted, "Captain, don't forget our mission," and left to chase the Iwa ninjas. Fujin wondered, "What mission? The one we are supposed to protect is already dead." Meanwhile, Roshi also wondered, did they come here using Kagawa as a front to do a secret mission? But what mission could have a higher importance than guarding Kagawa Noriequus? They entered into an intense conflict. However, both had thoughts running through their minds. The longer they fought, the more depressed Roshi became. He thought, "Though I have stopped paying attention to the internal situation in Ila, I still know that the old man hasn't found any successor for him. For decades, no one who can replace Onoki has appeared in Ila. Only me and Han came close, but we were asked to take control of the tailed beasts. But Konoha, they had White Fan who dominated the Second Great Ninja War. He was followed by the Sanins who gained fame in the Second War and dominated the Third War. And while they were still at their peak, Namikaze Minato rose to fame and took command of their forces. Even though they suffered numerous losses after the Third Great Ninja War, their next generation is already stepping up. First Copy Ninja and now this guy. Though he isn't as strong as me, his speed exceeds mine, and his attacks are all very deadly. Even if I get hit by just one, I'll be gravely injured or dead." At the same time, Fujin was seriously introspecting. Should I kill him or just stall? He analyzed. If I kill him now, the Four Tails will die as well and will need a few years to resurrect. If I can capture and seal it inside me and become a perfect Jinwekuric, then my prowess will increase many folds. But Fujin flickered to his right to dodge the wave of lava heading at him. Roshi launched another round of molten rocks at Fujin, which he dodged as well while counterattacking. He further analyzed. But by the time the Four Tails is resurrected, Akatsuki would have begun capturing tailed beasts. The place of resurrection will be random. And there is no way I could compete with Akatsuki in intel gathering, unless I can build the organization in time. But that's still incredibly tough. Not to mention, there is no way anyone can compete with Zetsu in terms of gathering information. Besides, even if I have great luck and manage to become a Jinwekuric, I will have very little time to become a perfect one. After all, creating friendship and a deep enough bond will be very difficult after I beat him up and seal him inside me. Fujin let out a sigh and thought, "Leave it, I'm not ready yet. Killing him now could result in a conflict with Ada. It could change the course of future events. Not to mention, I doubt I could kill him, unless he becomes very careless for some reason. If he transforms, then the only way I can confront him is by summoning Ryu. But that will exhaust all my chakra, and I doubt Ryu can win against Son Goku. Still, this is a good opportunity to test my skills." Fujin's expression suddenly became very serious. Though his face was hidden by the turtle mask, Roshi felt the change in his attitude. Fujin suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Roshi and swung his sword vertically. Roshi immediately moved to his left. A sword slash passed by, leaving a deep scar on the ground. Suddenly, several cuts appeared on his arm despite dodging the attack. Roshi's eyes widened as he flickered away. He realized, in addition to the main slash, there were hundreds of smaller slashes surrounding it. Fujin followed Roshi and swung his sword 6 times in quick succession. 6 razor-sharp sword slashes streaked towards Roshi with blinding speed. Roshi's eyes widened as he thought, if these also have the additional slashes, then he moved his body such that he would narrowly dodge all the sword slashes. At the same time, one tail appeared behind him and red chakra appeared on his body. Before the sword slashes reached him, a coating of lava enveloped his entire body. The sword slashes narrowly missed his body, while the accompanying winds hit his lava armor. Numerous cuts appeared on his armor, but none reached his flesh. Fujin thought, "A lava armor, that's interesting." He immediately shot a vacuum bullet at his heart. Roshi immediately dodged. Though the armor could stop weaker attacks, it wouldn't stand any chance against attacks with high penetrating power. Fujin observed, "I see, its defense shouldn't be very high, at least he isn't confident of blocking my vacuum jutsus." Lava release fiery rock bullet jutsu. Roshi shot 3 lava boulders at Fujin. Fujin dodged them, but Roshi used the distraction to reduce the distance between them. He appeared at Fujin's right, jumped above and sent a punch towards his head, knowing that his sword won't be cut through Roshi's fist from the previous exchange. Fujin moved backwards. Roshi's punch hit the ground, causing cracks to appear in the ground. One such crack extended towards Fujin, while emitting red light and a lot of heat. Fujin immediately got out of the way. Lava erupted out of that crack. At the same time, Fujin's clothes caught on fire. Fujin was shocked. Roshi used this distraction to once again appear in front of Fujin. Fujin looked at Roshi's grin and wondered, "When did he burn my clothes?" Roshi sent a punch at Fujin once again. Fujin slashed at his lava-covered fist with his sword again as he realized, "I see, the heat from his armor is so intense that my clothes caught on fire despite not being touched by him." Just when the fist and sword were about to clash, Roshi opened his fist and caught the sword. The sword cut a couple of inches into his palm but couldn't cut any more due to the highly concentrated chakra flowing through his arm. Roshi held the sword tightly as he raised his left fist to pummel Fujin to death. However, before he could punch Fujin, a punch landed on his abdomen and sent him flying backwards. Chapter 303 Changing the Terrain. Roshi flipped in the air and landed back on his feet but was still dragged backwards for another dozen meters. He looked at Fujin who was standing in the same spot. However, his left hand was lit on fire. Roshi chuckled and said, "Since you dared to punch my lava armor, you can say goodbye to your ha." His words got stuck in his throat as he saw Fujin wave his left arm in the air and the fire dissipated. He noticed that Fujin's left arm was completely black in color. A frown appeared on Roshi's face as he realized, Iron Skin Jutsu. He can use Rank B Earth Jutsus as well, though it isn't enough to resist my armor for a longer period but should enable him to be able to punch or kick me. The cut on Roshi's right hand stopped bleeding and began healing slowly. Suddenly, Fujin's entire body became covered in the same color. The fire on his clothes was extinguished as Fujin flickered and appeared behind Roshi. He slashed his sword at his back. Roshi immediately escaped. A sword slash was released from Fujin's sword. It hit the river and left a deep scar across it. Fujin chased after Roshi, thinking, "I can't maintain Iron Skin Jutsu for too long. I need to deal some critical blows quickly." Just when Fujin was about to reach him, Roshi turned around and spat out a large amount of lava. Fujin's eyes widened as he flickered away in an instant and landed on top of the river. The lava covered the entire area. Waves of lava surged towards Fujin like a tsunami. Fujin frowned and wondered, "Does he want to massacre the entire town behind me? Even if it silences the ones who heard my roar, there is no way we can get out of this mess without suffering any major diplomatic consequences." Fujin swung his sword at the river. This time, he didn't focus on the penetrating power. Instead, he created a 100-meter-long wind slash. The wind slash hit the river vertically along the length of the river. It caused the river water to gush out towards the lava wave. The water and lava waves clashed, covering the entire area in mist. The lava wave broke through the water wave but lost a lot of its momentum. It still continued forward and entered the river. Knowing that it won't be able to harm Fujin, Roshi appeared on the riverbank and ran across the river to fight Fujin. Fujin was about to attack when he sensed a chakra build up behind him. Water Release Raging Waves Jutsu, Water Release Raging Waves Jutsu, Lightning Release False Darkness Jutsu. Buniro and Yugo spat a large amount of water. The water in the river mixed with their attack, and it rushed towards Roshi like a waterfall. At the same time, Fumito released a strong lightning current in the waterfall. A frown formed on Roshi's face. He spat out a large amount of lava once again while he retreated back to the riverbank. Fujin swung his sword at the lava wave and flickered next to Yugo on the riverbank behind him. The wind slash hit the lava wave. It slowed down the momentum of the wave by more than 70%. A moment later, the combination jutsu of water and lightning hit the lava wave. It forced the lava wave back to the other bank. Roshi slammed his hands on the ground. 3 layers of walls formed by molten rocks appeared in front of him. The combination attack broke through the first wall, but was stopped by the second wall. The third wall broke down by itself, and molten rocks were fired at the Konoha and Kuza ninjas on the other bank. Fujin swung his sword at the incoming rocks and asked, "What's the status?" The slashes hit the molten rocks. The smaller rocks were split into two, while the larger ones had a deep scar in them. They lost their momentum and dropped into the river, Yugo replied. "We tried chasing them, but they retreated below the ground. Chasing became very risky due to their constant and unpredictable attacks from underground." Fujin was surprised. He thought, I guess taking off one arm wasn't sufficient. Sigh, I should not underestimate anyone who managed to gain the elite Junin rank. Though I guess that others might have helped him, he said. "All right, you guys retreat. I'll retreat soon as well. We will meet up in the same town." His subordinates nodded while the Kuza ninjas sighed in relief. They had seen the terrible devastation caused by Fujin and Roshi's fight. The entire landscape on the other side of the river had changed. There was no longer any grass on the land. Instead, the entire land had turned into volcanic terrain covered in long scars. Even the river wasn't spared. They could see a slash cutting across the river. In addition, though most of the lava was washed along by the river, some of it was still left behind and solidified. It had decreased the width of the river by 20-35% in some places. Yugo wondered, why do these cuts on the land look like sword attacks? The Konoha and Kuza ninjas began running along the river to get away from them. Roshi didn't pay any attention to them as he analyzed. Jin should have kept them safe. Even without Jin, they would have a very difficult time chasing them successfully. No other village can compare with us when it comes to making an orderly retreat. Though I could try to kill them, I'm afraid that this guy will allow me to kill them so that he can get an opportunity to sneak attack me, he said in a loud voice. "You must be the rumored spectral swordsman who gained fame recently. As expected, you are from Konoha." The retreating ninjas heard him and were surprised. Yugo looked back at Fujin and thought, he is the spectral swordsman. No wonder his swordplay is so good. Buniro wondered, spectral swordsman, what's that? Meanwhile, the Kuza ninjas had a grim expression. After all, the number of Kuza ninjas that fell to the spectral swordsman's blade wasn't small. Ryochi looked at Yugo and asked, "Is he the spectral swordsman?" Yugo shook her head and replied, "I'm not aware of him having any such title." A frown formed on Ryochi's face. Though Yugo was wearing a mask, he could sense from her words that she wasn't lying. He looked back at Roshi and wondered, is he lying, or is that Konoha Anbu the spectral swordsman? But his subordinates are unaware. Suddenly, his eyes widened. So did the ones of other ninjas who were watching them. For the first time since they began fighting, Fujin grabbed his sword with both hands and pulled it to his right side. An immense amount of wind chakra flowed through the sword. In an instant he swung his sword, forming a proper arc. A gigantic wind slash was released from his sword. Alongside it, extremely sharp and strong winds were released. The winds under the slash hit the river water. Several cuts appeared in the river, and all the river water for around 100 meters was sent rolling to the other side of the bank. The Kuza ninjas were horrified by the attack. Buniro was starstruck while Yugo and Fumito had serious expressions. Though they had realized that Fujin was stronger than them, they never imagined that the difference between them would be so high. Despite their emotions, they, like the Kuza ninjas, doubled their speed and escaped. Of course, the one who was the most serious was Roshi. The lava armor on his body began burning brightly as he jumped up immediately and dodged the main wind slash. At the same time, he spat out molten lava and swiftly shaped it into a half-spherical shield. In an instant it solidified. Hundreds of small cuts appeared on the shield, but it held on, as Roshi kept pouring more chakra and lava into it. A second later, it was hit by the water wave. Roshi wasn't concerned about the water. After all, Fujin couldn't control it. But he was on high alert. Though his shield stood strong, he abandoned it and moved to his left. A moment later, a vacuum bullet streaked through the water and hit the shield, piercing it with ease. The river water traveled a long distance along the banks. Due to the heated ground, which was mixed with lava, a lot of it was turned into steam. In a few seconds, the entire terrain was covered in steam, and it became very difficult to see. Roshi's frown deepened. A second later, he gathered a lot of chakra in his right fist and punched towards his left. His fist hit Fujin's sword and stopped it. He noticed that Fujin's body was covered with the iron skin jutsu once again. Instead of attacking again, Fujin took a step back and disappeared from Roshi's eyesight. Chapter 304. Where the fuck did you summon me? Roshi cursed. This is annoying. He has completely hidden his chakra, just like in Kiri's assassination technique. Before he could do anything, Fujin appeared in front of him and slashed at his chest. Roshi punched the sword once again and managed to push Fujin away. Fujin disappeared, and a second later appeared behind him. Roshi turned around and stopped Fujin once again, forcing Fujin to disappear once again. Roshi was expecting another attack from Fujin, but none came. Regardless, he stayed on guard. Seconds kept passing, but no attack came. After 30 seconds, Roshi had enough. Continuously maintaining full awareness while waiting for an attack was very taxing and increased the stress. He gathered a massive amount of chakra in his right hand once again and punched towards the ground. He intended to use the flower fruit mountain jutsu to clear up all the steam. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he stopped his punch. A vacuum bullet passed through the space where his fist would have been had he continued his attack. Quickly, he bent below before moving backwards. 2 more vacuum bullets passed through the space he would have been in had he not moved. Roshi gathered chakra and shot a fiery rock bullet from the direction the vacuum bullets were launched. Unfortunately, he didn't sense it hitting anything. Fujin stopped attacking once again. Roshi thought, "Shit, this is getting annoying. Though I'm confident I can keep dodging successfully, one mistake could cost me my life. But since when did Konoha get the courage to kill a Jinwekuric in peacetime? Has their strength recovered to such an extent that they don't mind getting attacked by both Kumo and us at the same time?" Although Roshi was stronger, Fujin had complete control of the battlefield. Unlike Roshi, whose attacks caused large-scale devastation, Fujin's attacks were always on point. They were all deadly and gave Roshi very little time to react and were quickly followed up by more attacks. For the next minute, Roshi maintained full guard but wasn't attacked by Fujin even once. Finally, Roshi began building his chakra once again. However, he stopped midway and ducked down. A vacuum wave passed above him. He immediately began rolling to his right and dodged 3 vacuum bullets and 1 vacuum wave. Soon after, he got off the ground and continued moving to his right as a vacuum wave landed on the ground. His eyes widened as another vacuum wave grazed past his left leg. He quickly jumped backwards, but a deep cut is left in his left leg, almost exposing his bone. Before he could gather himself, he sensed movement behind him. He ignored the wound and turned around and threw a punch at the incoming sword. The fist and sword clashed once again. Roshi was surprised as Fujin didn't retreat. He was about to punch with his other fist, but his eyes widened and he quickly took a couple of steps behind. He saw 2 vacuum bullets passing a few inches in front of him. His expression became grim as he realized, shadow clones. The Fujin in front of him moved forward and attacked him with his sword. At the same time, another Fujin appeared behind him and attacked his back. In addition, a few more vacuum bullets were fired at Roshi. Realizing the grave risk he was in, Roshi dodged and shouted, "Enough!" Suddenly, a massive amount of red chakra was released from his body. It covered his entire body. At the same time, it released several waves of pure chakra around him. Fujin's clones were very close to him. Their eyes widened, but they didn't have enough time to move. They immediately used the iron skin jutsu to protect themselves. The chakra wave hit them and sent them flying away in opposite directions. The red waves also reached the real Fujin, who was maintaining distance and attacking with vacuum bullets. He immediately flickered away while thinking, "What the hell, he can use Son Goku's chakra to this extent without losing control? Or does he not care about losing control?" The red chakra waves traveled for about 40 meters around Roshi. The steam covering the area was blown away, and even more damage was done to the ground. Without the steam cover, Roshi could see Fujin clearly. He looked at him and thought, that was close. With his shadow clones, the danger was amplified exponentially. If I keep dodging, it would only be a matter of time before I mess up. Anyways, now that he has forced me, it's time to end this. At the same time, Fujin also looked at Roshi. Shock could be seen in his eyes. He saw that the chakra covering Roshi had taken the shape of a red-furred and green-skinned monkey, looking exactly like the four-tails Son Goku. What shocked Fujin the most was that Roshi looked to be in complete control of himself. He stood calmly in the head of the chakra construct. Fujin was dumbfounded. He thought, impossible. I thought only BN the 4th Mizukage were perfect Jinkyukaris. Why would I have fought him for so long otherwise? The sight scared Fujin. He immediately became very serious. He was about to make a move when he sensed some movements under his feet. He gathered chakra under his feet and jumped high in the sky. The ground transformed into small spikes, which were launched at Fujin. Noticing the opportunity, Roshi shot a ball of lava at Fujin. Fujin immediately slashed his sword towards the incoming spikes while looking at the ball of lava and analyzing. Such a gigantic ball of lava. My vacuum cannon might not stop it. One seal on his left bracer began glowing. 100 explosive tags appeared in front of Fujin in a flash. Fujin controlled the winds and caused the explosive tags to fly towards the lava ball in 3 layers. Roshi was surprised. Just before the lava ball was about to crash into the first layer of explosive tags, all 100 explosive tags blew up. The shockwaves from the explosions decreased the momentum of the lava ball until it came to a halt and began losing its shape. The lava fell down to the ground. Immediately, Fujin focused his chakra field under the ground. He realized, someone is hiding his chakra underground. Should be that Elite Junin. Say, what a mess, I need to retreat. Fujin dispelled the 2 shadow clones on the ground to gain their chakra. Roshi looked at Fujin, who was around 100 meters in the air, and muttered, to jump airborne against a Jin Wekarik who has displayed some control over his tailed beast. What a stupid move. He began gathering chakra to end the fight, but his eyes suddenly widened in shock. Multiple seals on each of Fujin's braces lit up. Roshi watched in shock as he noticed more than 2,000 explosive tags appearing in the sky. The number was utterly ridiculous. Roshi was speechless. He wondered, was his real mission to destroy a city or something? In an instant, the wind began blowing. All the explosive tags moved towards the ground at a rapid speed. Roshi didn't bother creating any defenses. He was confident that despite their high numbers, the tags won't cause any harm to him. The chakra body of Son Goku opened its massive maw wide open. Concentrated chakra began gathering in a swirling vortex and pulsed it with an overwhelming intensity. Behind his mask, Fujin's expression became very grim. He controlled the explosive tags while weaving hand signs. As the explosive tags moved down, they spread over the entire battlefield and split into multiple waves. The first wave had 400 explosive tags, the second had 600, and the third had 1,200 tags. The explosive tags in the first wave landed on the ground. At the same time, the explosive tags in the second wave maneuvered in the air and surrounded the chakra body of Son Goku. Meanwhile, the third layer appeared on top of the tailed beast bomb. At the same time, it also blocked Fujin from Roshi's view. While the explosive tags were moving, Fujin completed his hand signs. A summoning jutsu, a cloud of smoke appeared under him. A figure appeared in it and arrogantly said, "The great winged saber-twa Lord Goro is her." However, his words were cut short. All the explosive tags exploded at the same moment. In an instant, the entire area was covered by a loud explosion sound. The intensity of the explosion made Goro look down in horror. At the same time, he sensed Son Goku's chakra and the fluctuations from the tailed beast bomb. Every single hair on his body stood up. He muttered in shock, "Where the fuck did you summon me, Fujin?" Chapter 305, Killing Tchichikal with one hand tied behind the back. Fujin landed on Goro's back and shouted, "Goro, there is no time, return and reverse summon me." For the first time, Fujin saw Goro nod obediently. Fujin used Goro's body to jump even higher in the sky. Immediately after, Goro disappeared into a cloud of smoke. Jin, who was underground, had sensed Son Goku's chakra. Instead of running away, he decided to move deeper into the ground. The massive explosion rocked the land. Despite being over 50 meters underground, he felt the ground around him vibrating. He quickly escaped deeper while thinking, "Don't tell me Roshi used tailed beast bomb. Shit, we are in another country." At the same time, the people in Mikosuo town were all hidden in underground bunkers. Though the Ide family wasn't as generous as the Kagawa family, they had spent a lot of effort on building good bunkers as their town was very close to the border. So the people were feeling safe. However, they suddenly heard an extremely loud explosion sound. The people were confused and scared. A few seconds later, they began feeling a vibration under their feet. Soon after, the entire bunker began shaking. The people were horrified by the sound of the explosions and didn't want to move out. However, they were worried that they might be buried in the bunkers, so they quickly began leaving the bunkers. Fortunately, none of the bunkers crumbled, due to which no deaths happened. Unlike Jin and the people in Mikosuo, Roshi was directly attacked by the tags. The explosions covered him in dust and smoke. However, soon, a massive amount of chakra began surging into the dust cover. As the tailed beast bomb was being formed, winds began moving rapidly. The dust was blown apart and revealed his figure. Fujin's face became solemn as he noticed. The explosions didn't harm him even a bit. I was hoping that the explosion from the first 2 waves destabilizes him and the explosion from the 1,200 tags pushes the incomplete tailed beast bomb onto him. I guess it was too much to expect. In a few seconds, the tailed beast bomb reached its full potential and stopped growing any further. The noise generated due to the formation of the bomb disappeared. Fujin concentrated on the tailed beast bomb completely. The momentum due to jumping from Goro's body was completely lost, and his body had begun falling down slowly. Roshi looked at Fujin and muttered, "Rest in peace." He launched the massive tailed beast bomb at Fujin. As soon as the tailed bomb was launched, Fujin's bracer began glowing again. 100 explosive tags appeared and moved towards the bomb. These were the last tags stored in his bracer. At the same time, he twisted his body in the air to face east. A large amount of wind was blasted from his back, making him fly out of the path of the tailed beast bomb. Roshi noticed Fujin's efforts but wasn't bothered by them. He shook his head and thought, "Looks like he is still too young. Against a tailed beast bomb, such efforts are pointless." In a moment, the tailed beast bomb hit the explosive tags. Though the tags all exploded, they couldn't even slow down the bomb. The tailed beast bomb reached the same altitude as Fujin and exploded. Fujin turned his head and looked behind him. Fear coursed through his veins, causing his pupils to constrict in terror as he noticed the massive explosion behind him. He thought, "So fast, hurry up Goro or I'll be dead." The tailed beast bomb didn't even need a second to reach his previous location. He focused all his chakra on his back, causing more intense winds to be blasted behind him. At the same time, his body was covered in the iron skin jutsu. A powerful blast wave rippled through the air. It reached Fujin. In the blink of an eye, it broke through the intense winds behind Fujin, as if they were non-existent, and hit him. Fujin gritted his teeth as he felt an intense pain in his back. Fortunately, he suddenly disappeared from his position. The blast wave continued expanding for kilometers in the air. The sound of the explosion was heard for several miles. The people in Miko's duo hadn't even reached the doors of the bunkers and were still feeling the effects of the previous explosion when they heard the loud sound. They covered their ears in pain and were horrified. However, they had no other option but to leave the bunkers. No one wanted to be buried alive. A frown formed on Roshi's face. He looked above and thought, "That's weird." His chakra just disappeared in an instant instead of decreasing progressively. Considering his strength and that he wasn't hit directly, he shouldn't die in a moment. Did Kunoe gain a successor for the Flying Thunder God technique? But why did he take so much effort to dodge in that case? Due to the explosion tags and the chakra disturbance by the tailed beast bomb. Roshi hadn't sensed Goro, so he wasn't aware of Fujin's plan to reverse summon himself. Mount Muteki. Fujin disappeared from the battlefield and appeared on Mount Muteki. A look of relief appeared on Goro's face as Fujin appeared in front of him. He was about to boast when his eyes widened. Fujin's hardened body slammed into his face with tremendous force. Both of them slammed into the mountain, creating a small cave inside the cave they were in. The sound immediately attracted the attention of other winged saber. Ryu frowned and began flying towards the cave. Land of Grass. Roshi observed the skies properly to see whether he had missed anything. He maintained his form. While he was paying attention to the sky, a slight movement was happening under the ground. Round 10 seconds later, a head popped out of the ground and observed the situation. He looked above with fear in his eyes and thought, "So scary. I was worried for my main body, but since I am fine, my main body should have retreated safely." He was a shadow clone Fujin created and hidden underground when he was sneak attacking Roshi under the cover of steam. However, the battlefield changed very rapidly, forcing the clone to hide deeper into the ground, leaving him without any means to provide aid to Fujin. He thought, "Since my main body didn't dispel me, he should have a reason to keep me here. It's either to kill that elite Junin hiding underground or to test Roshi. If I try to sense the elite Junin, Roshi will sense me and defeat me. After all, I'm no match for him, and I doubt that elite Junin will die easily. Not to mention, he is hiding deep underground. Though my vacuum jutsus have good piercing power, they can't pierce through tens of meters of ground. So there is just one option. Against a ninja who could use the wind vacuum technique, hiding underground was very risky. It would severely restrict mobility, and the attacks could easily pierce into the ground. But by moving so deep, Jin had unknowingly got into the best defensive position. So Fujin's clone decided to completely ignore him. He focused over 80% of his chakra into his throat. The sudden chakra build-up attracted Roshi's attention. He quickly turned his head and looked at where the clone was. Wind release vacuum cannon jutsu in an instant. Fujin's clone shot the vacuum cannon at Roshi. Roshi's eyes widened. He instinctively moved within the chakra construct. The jutsu traveled at a very high speed and hit the head of the chakra, shaped like Son Goku. The cannon easily pierced into the chakra and broke through the other side, leaving a massive hole in the head. However, Roshi had moved out of the path of the attack. He controlled the chakra to refill the hole with Son Goku's chakra in a second. Though he wasn't hurt, his expression was dark. Despite being in his strongest state, he was still in danger, despite not doing any damage. The clone had a smile on his face as he analyzed. Though the chakra cloak of a tailed beast provides decent defense, it is much weaker than that of a Sasano. As long as I have a way to dodge the tailed beast bomb safely consistently, I can threaten even a Jinwekuric. But winning should be impossible for now. Their bodies are just too big and their attacks are too strong. They can easily maneuver their position and dodge my attacks while counterattacking. Roshi began moving towards the clone and said, "Impressive, to deceive me and make me attack your clone while you stayed hidden safely. No wonder your chakra disappeared so suddenly, but you should have stayed hidden instead of trying to kill me." Roshi was about to attack him again when the clone raised his palm and said, "Let's stop here." Roshi was confused by Fujin's actions. He asked, "What do you mean?" The clone said, "Both our squads have already retreated and neither of us can kill each other. Let's call it a day. We will settle our battle on another battlefield. After all, Iya and Konoha aren't at war." Hoshi's expression became dark at Fujin's shamelessness. He had killed so many Iwa ninjas, and yet didn't have an ounce of shame in his voice while claiming that Ayu and Konoha weren't at war. Roshi did not doubt that if Fujin could finish him off, he would never speak such words. Though Roshi could sense it, he never managed to get a hang of Fujin's chakra reserves, as Fujin always masked it to show that it was very low, despite being able to fight for a long time. But he was sure that after using so many high-level ninjutsu in intense combat, Fujin's reserves should be very low. He said, "You killed so many of our ninjas, and you think that I will just let you go? Besides, how much chakra do you still have left after fighting for so long?" He was about to attack when the clone snorted and replied, "Chakra, I have got more than you and Hon combined. If Lord Hokage didn't permit me to kill you, then do you think you would still be alive? Heck, I would have gone to Igawatga and killed your old Tuchiagak with one hand tied behind my back." Chapter 306 Injuries. Roshi was left speechless. It was the first time he had heard someone claim something as ridiculous as that. Even him and Hon fighting together wouldn't dare to claim that they could kill Onoki. The claim was so absurd that he didn't even get angry and instead laughed. He asked, "Kill the old man with one hand tied behind your back? Are you called Senjo Hashirama or Uchiha Madara?" At the same time, he calmed down and thought, "He is trying to rile me up by trying to make me angry, so he wants me to drop my guard or make a mistake and land a critical hit. But what means does he have to harm me when I am cloaked by the four-tailed beast's chakra? Does he still have a stronger attack than that cannon and the chakra to perform it?" Fujin's clone didn't care how absurd his claim was. He wasn't sure if his main body had used reverse summon or flew away on Kaito. If it was the second case, then he needed to waste some time to ensure that they would be too far away for Roshi to even know where to chase. If it wasn't, then he could just collect more information from Roshi and transmit them back to his main body. The clone cursed angrily. "What? Do you not believe me? Do you think I am bluffing? Lead me to Igawatga. I'll defeat that old geezer with one hand tied behind my back. I will even spare his life as my leader didn't ask for it." Roshi looked at the clone with a deadpan expression and thought, "Yeah, right, bring along someone with as lethal jiatsus as you. Still, this is amusing. Even that Daidara kid isn't as brazen as him." Roshi replied, "Sure, let me seal your chakra, and then you can travel with me." The clone retorted, "Seal my chakra? What if you go back on your word and attack me when I'm helpless?" "That won't do. I'll be traveling without any restrictions." A frown formed on Roshi's face as he thought, "Something is off. He is giving almost no signs of a sneak attack. Is he wasting time to regain his chakra with a soldier pill?" Though Roshi had an advantage in chakra, he didn't want to let Fujin recover his chakra and keep bugging him with the wind vacuum jutsus. He opened his mouth and spat a wave of lava towards Fujin's clone. Fujin's clone sighed and began running away. He muttered to himself, "I barely have any chakra left. I think I can flicker just twice at best." Roshi noticed him running and thought, "As I calculated, he is low on chakra." He immediately chased the clone. Due to his larger size, his movement was much faster. He reached the clone and threw a punch at him. However, despite having a complete advantage, he was on guard against any counterattacks. The clone flickered along the riverbanks and ran in the direction opposite of what his subordinates and the Kuza ninjas had taken. Roshi chased and was led away from the town on the opposite bank. A frown formed on his face as he thought, "I have to finish the battle quickly. Though I can control the beast's chakra, I don't have total control over it. I can't maintain this state for long." He opened his mouth and launched a large ball of lava. The clone sighed and used his second body flicker. However, Roshi chased and attacked once again. The clone looked at the incoming ball of lava and thought, "This is as far as I can go, it's fine. The main body should be safe." The lava ball hit him and exploded, dispelling him, as he was on the opposite side of the lava ball. Roshi couldn't see him being dispelled into a cloud of smoke. A frown appeared on Roshi's face. He wasn't happy. He thought, something is wrong. This was too easy, almost as if it was a shadow clone that had run out of chakra. As the lava spread out, Roshi noticed that there was no dead body or even bones left behind. He realized that his guess was right. He fell silent and began thinking rapidly. He calculated, if this was a clone, was the one in the air his real body? If the real body managed to escape, then it would make sense for the clone to exist and waste time. Or could it be that both were clones? After all, fighting me was foolish. So did he send another clone to distract me while he ran away? Or perhaps he is still hiding and wants me to believe that I have killed him so that I leave or put my guard down. A bunch of ideas appeared in his mind, but Roshi couldn't be sure which was right. He stopped using Son Goku's chakra and returned to his normal state. Most of the injuries on his body were already healed. Only a scar was left on his left leg and right hand. He concluded, if the one that was hit by my tailed beast bomb was the real him, then he has managed to escape. I can't track him, so no point in considering that. I'll just assume that he is hiding here and look for him. He is dangerous. It will be best if we kill him before the start of the next Great War. He suddenly turned his head to the right. The ground was moving and a person climbed out. Jin looked around and asked, is he dead? Roshi shook his head and said, unlikely. He has escaped or is hiding underground. Help me look for him, but be careful of any sneak attacks. Jin was surprised, he thought. Even Roshi couldn't kill him. He nodded and cooperated with Roshi to scan through the area. Mount Muteki Goro complained, what the hell, it feels like a block of iron fell from space and hit my head. Fujin got on his feet, his body was still shivering. He coughed blood a few times and muttered while breathing heavily, sorry, just the blast wolf sent me flying. Fujin was still scared. After transmigrating to the ninja world, Fujin had been very careful. Until the root was dissolved, he tried to keep his abilities as hidden as possible to avoid gaining Danzo's attention. During the missions, though he had grown to love a strong fight, he always controlled his impulse and always chose the easiest and the most efficient option. Though Roshi wasn't the strongest opponent he encountered, this was the first time he came so close to death. Against Kakazu and Kaminari, he had managed to escape very quickly. Against Darui, though his position was bad, his life hadn't been put in danger directly. Despite the risks, he always held his life and death in his own hands. This was the first time that he had completely trusted his life and death in the hands of another. Goro noticed Fujin's fear. He stopped complaining and became serious. This was the first time he had seen Fujin in such a state. He asked, are you all right? Fujin nodded. He finally ended his iron skin jutsu and inspected his body. His left hand had several burns up to the elbow. There were several other burns on his body. The worst was his back. He had inscribed several seals into his clothes. Despite them, the back of his jacket and shirt was blown apart. Even his mesh upper bodysuit was blown. A few of the metal pieces from it were embedded in his back. In addition, the blastwolf had damaged his back as well. He could feel that some of his rib bones were cracked. Realizing the damage, Fujin's expression became grim. He thought, fortunately I used the iron skin jutsu, otherwise just the mesh itself might have killed me. Goro noticed the injuries and said, you are injured. Fujin nodded and said, it's fine. None of the injuries are serious. Goro sighed in relief and asked, in what mess were you, and what was that dangerous chakra? Fujin sighed and said, he was a Gene Wekaric, a ninja who hosts the four-tailed beast. I thought that he couldn't control it. But my information was wrong. That's why I fell into such a dangerous position. He looked at Goro and said, thanks Goro, had you been a second late I'd have been dead. Fujin genuinely was thankful. Goro chuckled and said, you're worrying too much. Though you aren't as good as this lord, your skin is extremely thick as well. Both suddenly looked towards the entrance of the cave. Ryu's massive body appeared in their eyes. Ryu entered the cave and observed the destruction. He asked, what happened here? His eyes landed on Fujin and narrowed. He asked, who injured you? Goro and Fujin gulped as they felt the killing intent emitted by Ryu. Chapter 307 A bottleneck. Ryu was indeed angry. He had placed a lot of hopes on Fujin, though he hadn't taught him anything yet. He was preparing to guide Fujin in the future. Fujin was about to answer when he said, leave it. Heal yourself first, then find me. Goro, look after him in the meantime. Ryu calmed down as he noticed that though there were a lot of injuries on Fujin's body, none were life-threatening. Goro replied, "Don't worry, Dad, you can leave Fujin in this lord's care." Ryu ignored his son's antics and left, following him. The remaining winged saber were left as well. Goro looked at Fujin and said, "But, this lord doesn't know how to heal humans." Fujin took out a bottle and said, "Yeah, I know, he ate a soldier pill." The battle with Roshi drained his chakra a lot. Just when Fujin was about to retreat, Roshi unleashed his full strength. Summoning Goro had taken up most of his remaining chakra, while the rest was poured into Assassin's Rush and Iron Skin jutsus. Had Goro not reverse summoned him in time, he was prepared to dispel his clone underground to get some more chakra. Fujin withdrew a paper seal from his ninja bag and crushed the seal on it. He looked at Goro and said, "I'll need around half an hour to regenerate some chakra. Carry me to a glacial lake. It will help to soothe the wounds temporarily and aid in the healing process." Goro replied, "Sure, hop on." Fujin jumped on his back. He flew out and carried Fujin to a glacial lake that was located lower on the mountain. Land of Grass, the Kuza ninjas and Fujin's subordinates were rushing away from Miko's duo. Ryochi looked at the Konoha Anbu and said, "We won't be able to accompany you to the Kagawa family's town. We will be heading straight to Kasagaka." One of the Junins with him said, "But shouldn't we inform his family about the losses first? Our families are there as well. We need to meet." Ryochi cut him off and said, "No, this matter is huge. If you spread the news, chaos will spread throughout our country. We need to report to Kasagaka and form a proper plan first. This matter needs to be handled by the diplomats." He looked towards Konoha Anbu and said, "I am grateful for your aid, but I hope that you won't spread the news of what happened in Miko's duo either." Yugo replied, "I'll pass the message to our captain. It will be his decision." Ryochi nodded. The Kuza ninjas split off from the group and moved in a different direction. The Anbu continued on their path before changing their directions as well. Though Fujin had asked them to meet in the Kagawa family's town, it was just a code word for another small village they had come across while traveling. However, they suddenly heard a loud sound behind them. They stopped and looked back and noticed a smoke cloud in the air. Buniro asked in surprise, "What was that?" As they were already over 10 miles away from Miko's duo, they didn't sense the fearsome chakra fluctuations of the tailed beast bomb. Neither Yugo nor Fumito could provide any explanation. Buniro asked, "Should we return to check if Captain is all right?" Fumito shook his head and replied, "No, you are in Ambo. Following the instructions of the captain takes priority." Buniro nodded reluctantly. He was a bit worried for Fujin. They continued their journey. A few minutes later, they felt a vibration in their pouches. They quickly stopped and took out a paper tag. It had a seal similar to the one which Fujin crushed. In a moment, all 3 of the paper tags began burning. Buniro's eyes widened. He muttered, "This." Fumito and Yugo also became serious. Buniro said, "When Captain handed us this tag, he said that if this seal burns, we have to retreat back to Konoha." "What happened?" Yugo replied, "The fight might have been very difficult, or for some reason, he might not be able to meet us up at the rendezvous point." "Let's leave quickly." Buniro and Fumito nodded. They changed their direction once again and moved towards Konoha. Roshi and Jin looked for Fujin for around half an hour, but didn't find him for obvious reasons. They gave up and retreated from the Land of Grass after meeting up with the remaining Iwa ninjas who were hiding underground. Since the outside was calm for half an hour, the ninjas in Miko's duo finally dared to climb on the walls and observe the surroundings. The sight shocked them. On the other side of the river, the land was leveled several times for over a kilometer. Not a single strand of grass could be seen. Instead, it was covered with solidified lava. The river had changed as well. A wall of lava had solidified in its path, forming a temporary dam. It stopped the water flow, forcing excess water to move around the wall and through the banks to continue forward. They gulped in fear at that sight. Tomoki had a very ugly face. He could see the political implications of the day's events. He regretted asking Igawatga to assassinate Kagawa Noriekyuas, Mount Muteki. While all forces withdrew away from Miko's duo, Fujin was resting in the glacial lake. He wondered, "So where did I mess up?" He analyzed for a bit before concluding, "And my information wasn't right. I don't recall Roshi having such control over Son Goku in the series, and none of the intel about him in this world mentioned this. But Roshi has been the Jinwekarake since before the Second Great Ninja War. It's impossible that the village doesn't have this information, so the only possible answer is that for some reason, they have kept this information as top secret." A frown formed on Fujin's face. If he had known this information, then he wouldn't have fallen into such a risky situation. However, his expression became normal, as he thought, Though the village has to be blamed, I am at fault as well. I was overly dependent on the intel I had and didn't even consider Roshi using Tailed Beast Bomb while maintaining his sanity as a possibility. Even if the village had provided all details, what if my opponent gained new skills and abilities in secret? Though depending on intel gives a good advantage, I need to avoid over-dependence on it, especially when it comes to Jinwekuric and S-rank ninjas. As someone who gave the highest importance to his survival, Fujin immediately figured out his flaw and decided on what changes he should make to avoid falling into such desperate situations again. His mind immediately began thinking about the oddity. He thought, but why isn't Roshi considered a perfect Jinwekuric? Wait, now that I think about it, though he controlled a lot of chakra, he didn't transform into Son Goku like how B could with Juki. Could it be that even without a Tailed Beast's approval, Roshi could harness his chakra to such an extent and use Tailed Beast Bomb? Fujin thought for a bit and concluded, yes, that should be it. So though he isn't a perfect Jinwekuric, he isn't far from it. It's kinda like Naruto's first Kurama chakra mode, but instead of having just a little bit of Son Goku's chakra, he has access to at least half of it. Now that I think about it, I recall Yujito transforming into Matatabi against Akatsuki, while Gaara was able to construct Shukaku's body during the Konoha Crush. I guess it is easier to harness the chakra from Tailed Beast with lesser tails. I should be careful if I run into Yujito or Hon in the future. They might be able to use Tailed Beast Bombs as well. On concluding, his mind immediately began analyzing the fight, ignoring the battle after he released that massive chakra. This fight was a bit weird. Roshi was much stronger than me, be it in chakra, experience, defense or physical strength, but I had the advantage in speed and lethality, giving me the initiative for the majority of the fight. But no matter my advantage or initiative, I just couldn't injure him. Even the few injuries I caused began healing almost immediately due to the massive chakra. This sort of exposes a big flaw in my combat system, or rather, the imbalance in it. Right now I am heavily dependent on my combat speed and the speed and piercing power of vacuum jutsus. These two factors make it impossible for anyone under Elite Junin to last long against me. But Elite Junins are able to dodge my vacuum attacks and stop or dodge my sword safely. It makes it impossible to win those fights if they don't get distracted. Another flaw is that this method of fighting is very exhaustive on chakra. The main reason for this is that my other skills haven't managed to keep up with these two. Only sword skills and taijutsu comes close. The other elements and genjutsu are much weaker and can only be used in certain situations. Even fuin jutsu can't be used effectively in battle yet. However, I don't see any way of improving those skills in a short time. In fact, even improving vacuum jutsus is becoming very difficult. I can only create more forms that won't increase my combat strength drastically. It's almost as if I have reached some sort of bottleneck. How do I break through? Involuntarily, Fujin's gaze moved towards the peak of Mount Muteki. Chapter 308 Restlessness. Fujin's gaze landed on the peak of Mount Muteki. He thought, one easy way to break through this should be learning how to harness nature energy. With Sage Mode, I'll be able to keep up with the best of the current ninjas. The other alternative is learning Flying Thunder God. With it, I'll be able to teleport. It will make dodging my vacuum jutsus almost impossible, and I will be able to retreat at will. Unfortunately, when I learn either of them isn't in my hands. It depends on Ryu and Hiruzen, and I can't be sure whether I'd manage to learn them or not. If I end up failing to learn both, Senjutsu and Flying Thunder God, then my future prospects drop hard. Apart from these two, there are 4 other methods I can think of. The first is creating Scorch or Swift Release. Though in terms of difficulty, it might be even more difficult, as I would have neither guidance nor any information and just have a book with unsuccessful attempts towards a different Keki Genkai to refer to. The second method is to improve my speed even further. With the aid of Assassin's Rush Jutsu and training my body even further, I could enhance my speed even further. That could allow me to crush Elite Junins. In addition to this, I need to create a few original jutsus. Though they won't be as strong as the Rankai jutsus in the library, I will have to create them such that they complement my high-speed style of combat. The third method is likely the one that has the highest prospects, that is Fuin Jutsu and Juin Jutsu. Once I become a Grandmaster, I can make a list of seals that I can use on the battlefield. If I can use them as skillfully as Hiruzen did against Suna ninjas, it will be at the same level as my vacuum jutsus. The above 2 methods will need time as well, but they are the ones I am most confident in achieving. However, if I'm not able to learn Senjutsu or Flying Thunder God, then they won't allow me to reach the top of this world. That would leave me with just one option. Learning 8 inner gates from Geist, Fujin let out a sigh and stretched. He immediately winced due to pain. He muttered to himself, "This is so taxing. All these methods will need a lot of time. The time that I just don't have. I will need to quit Ambo soon. If I waste my time on long missions, I won't have enough time to train." Fujin let out another sigh. How to inform Hiruzen and convince him to let him quit Ambo was another headache. He stopped thinking about it and muttered, "My chakra has recovered a bit." Fujin got out of the lake and sat down. A shadow clone appeared next to him and began healing him. The cold water in the lake had soothed the burns on his body. The clone healed all the burn marks with ease, and finally turned his attention towards Fujin's back. He poured chakra into his back and said, 3 ribs are cracked. Luckily the spine is not damaged, though I can heal them. It's better to avoid training or fighting until we visit Konoha Hospital. Fujin nodded. The clone healed his back before dispelling itself. Fujin got up and stretched his back once again. A loud and satisfying cracking sound was heard. Fujin muttered, "Finally, it feels better." He looked up and said, "Goro, it's time to visit your father." Goro was flying above. He immediately landed next to Fujin and asked, "Done healing?" Fujin jumped on his back and said, "Yes." Goro replied, "You humans need such a long time and complicated procedures to heal." Fujin shrugged and replied, "Our physiques aren't as strong as a winged saber-tooth, and our bodies aren't infused with nature's energy. Obviously, we can't heal as quickly as you guys." Goro chuckled and replied, "Sucks to be you." He took flight. In less than a minute they appeared outside Ryu's cave. Goro said, "You can go alone. Summon me some time to have some fun, but don't summon me if that dangerous beast is around." Fujin chuckled and asked why. "Wasn't that fun?" He jumped off him. Goro angrily replied, "Hey, I'm only 41 years old. I want to live up to at least 41,000 years. Fujin chuckled and didn't reply. Goro flew away. Ryu opened his eyes and watched Fujin walking towards him. He asked, "So, what did you encounter?" Fujin informed him about his encounter with Roshi and the tailed beast within him. A frown formed on Ryu's face. He muttered, "A Jinwekaric. Humans managed to subdue the tailed beasts. I didn't expect that they would advance so much over the last few decades." Fujin thought with a sigh, "As I expected. Due to not having any summoner for so long, they aren't in touch with recent happenings in the ninja world, though I suppose they don't particularly care." Fujin asked, "How would you fare against the 4-tailed beast?" Ryu replied, "It's hard to say. I haven't fought any tailed beast yet. However, my grandfather did fight the one named Seiken. He said that they were quite evenly matched until Seiken used a technique that created a gigantic black ball of compressed chakra. It should be the tailed beast bomb you stated. That forced my grandfather to retreat and run away. As for the 4-tailed beast, from what I heard, he could use lava, so I will likely be at an even greater disadvantage, but I will have to see him to say for sure." Fat said, "Great-grandmother has instructed that even I would have to retreat if I ever face one in battle." Fujin nodded. It was as he had expected. Though Ryu was strong against the tailed beasts, he wouldn't stand much of a chance. At max, he would be able to stall them for some time. Seeing Fujin silent, Ryu asked, "Are you planning to go back?" Fujin shook his head and replied, "No way. If he is still waiting for me, I'll be dead. Not to mention his village has an even scarier old man." He looked into Ryu's eyes and said, "I was hoping to stay here for a while and learn senjutsu." Ryu looked back and observed Fujin for a few seconds. He replied, "You aren't ready yet." Fujin complained, "Come on. The world is so scary. I almost died today. With senjutsu, I will be able to protect myself." Ryu looked down at Fujin and said, "Stop being childish. Your body isn't strong enough to contain nature energy yet, nor is your chakra reserve high enough. More importantly," he stared at Fujin for a few seconds before continuing, "You are restless. I can feel restlessness and impatience from your mind, body and will. In such a state, you will never manage to learn how to harness nature energy." His words surprised Fujin. Ryu waited for Fujin to digest them and continued, "Stop being so impatient. For your age, you are very strong. Your attacks can even threaten me, instead of worrying and taking needless risks. Slow down and focus on all-round development. You still have a lot of time ahead of you." Ryu's words made Fujin think. After a couple of minutes, he let out a sigh and thought, "He is right. I have been too restless lately. I am too worried about the 4th Great Ninja War and increasing my strength. However, my restlessness might become the biggest obstacle." He took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, Ryu." Ryu nodded. In the last couple of years, he was quite impressed with Fujin's intelligence and maturity. He knew that he didn't need to say more. He said, "Rest here for as long as you want. You can fly back on Kaito. Fujin nodded. He was about to leave when he recalled something. He said, Ryu, I have created a new seal. I was wondering if I could leave one with you. It works on the principle that if I destroy my seal, it will cause the corresponding seal with you to catch fire. I can use that in times of danger and inform you to reverse summon me immediately. Ryu replied, that sounds handy. Unfortunately, we winged saberwa sleep for long periods and at times engage in battles with other worthy foes. If it doesn't catch our attention, then you'll be left in danger with false hope. Stick to the traditional method with us as it doesn't take very long. That said, leave the seal with me. If you can't even summon Goro for some reason, then you can use it as a last resort and pray that you are lucky. Fujin agreed and handed him a paper tag similar to the one he had given his squad. He rested for a day on Mount Muteki. While Fujin rested, the situation in the elemental nations became turbulent once again. Ryoichi reached Kusagaku and reported all the events to Ashikaga Hiroshi, the leader of Kusagaku. Chapter 309. The difference between Iwa and Suna. Hiroshi's expression became grim. He muttered, it hasn't been even a month since the Iwa and Konoha armies withdrew from our borders. I thought the situation would come down since Suna no longer made any strange moves. Instead, they clashed inside our country, and Iwa even deployed their Jinwekirik while Konoha sent someone who could fight a Jinwekirik. Ryoichi said, Kagawa Noriekyuus was probably aware of something. That's why he had issued a secret mission to Konoha, so we can't blame Konoha. Hiroshi shook his head and said, no, the fact that their Ambu captain was the spectral swordsman shows that they had ulterior motives as well. But you are right, we can't blame them. We can't afford to offend both villages. Besides, I have already received multiple messages from Miko Stuo. The area around the town is extremely damaged. Even the town walls have suffered a lot of damage. Fortunately, there weren't many casualties. I have discussed this with Daimyo. He has already started the process of launching a protest against Igawaka by sending an official letter to the Earth Daimyo. He also sent a message to the Fire Daimyo and Waterfall Daimyo. A diplomatic process will begin soon. It should apply a lot of pressure on Iwa and Onoki. Ryoichi nodded. He had anticipated a similar action. The only thing that he didn't expect was that Miko Stuo would send a message before he reached. He asked to see the messages to confirm that there were no falsehoods. To his surprise, all messages stated the truth other than the fact that Itomoki feigned ignorance about any collusion with Iwa. Hiroshi said, I have asked our ninjas to begin preparing for an emergency situation. You should join them. Your participation will increase their morale a lot. Help them increase their preparedness. Though I doubt Iwa and Konoha would start a war, I want to make them unwilling to start a war on our lands. Ryoichi nodded. Before he left, he said, we need to investigate the Ide family. Noriekyuus was confident that they had invited the Iwa ninjas. In addition, they didn't help us in the fight. Hiroshi's expression became serious. He said, I know, don't worry, I have already made my move. They won't be let off easy. Igawaka. The next morning, a letter from the Earth and Fire Daimyo reached Igawaka and Konohagaku respectively. Onoki had just gotten to his office while complaining about his back problems. Suddenly, the door slammed open and a ninja rushed in. Lord Tsuchical. We have an emergency letter from Lord Daimyo. Onoki looked at him and scolded, why are you creating such a ruckus? I almost pulled my back once again. The ninja was quite used to the scolding and didn't get offended. Kitsuchi took the letter and said, don't mind, father. He opened the letter and began reading. His eyes widened. He quickly handed the letter to Onoki and said, this matter is serious. Onoki read the letter. His eyes widened. He muttered, what the hell are those fools doing? Why did they create such a ruckus? Kitsuchi asked, which mission were they sent on, father? And why did you deploy Roshi? I could have gone if needed. Onoki replied, I have to keep giving him and Han missions occasionally to keep them active. As he was talking, he suddenly heard some footsteps. Roshi, Jin and a few Iwa ninjas appeared outside his office. Onoki's eyes widened on seeing Jin's right arm. He became serious and said, Roshi, Jin, stay here. Others leave. The ones who are injured visit the hospital. Everyone immediately obeyed, only Onoki. Kitsuchi, Roshi and Jin were left in the office. Onoki tossed Roshi the letter and said, explain. While Roshi read the letter, Onoki asked Jin, how did you lose your arm? And why did so few ninjas come with you? Where are the rest? Jin was an elite Junin. Though Iza wasn't in a bad situation like Suna, every elite Junin was precious. They were an important pillar of their village. They wouldn't want to lose one pointlessly. Jin sighed and said, I made an error and it cost my arm. Without Roshi's help, I might have died. As for the others, they were all killed. Onoki and Kitsuchi were shocked. Losing 19 capable ninjas in one single mission was a big blow. All of them had Chunin or Junin ranks. Onoki became very serious and asked, "You mean that 19 ninjas died on the mission? Including Chiharu, whose aid you requested?" Seeing Jin stand silently, Onoki commanded, "Tell me everything that happened." Jin nodded and informed Onoki about the events from their ambush on the bridge until he retreated. A grim expression appeared on Onoki's face. Jin's plan was appropriate, but other than the first move, nothing went according to his plan. He wondered, since when did Kanoha get the guts to openly kill 19 ninjas of my village in one single operation? Is Hiruzen no longer afraid that we might not help them when Kumo attacks? Why did his Ambu not retreat after seeing such a large-scale attack, or did he deploy them specifically to target us? He muttered, how did Kanoha know that we would ambush the Kagawa family, and why did that old monkey send such a strong Ambu squad? Besides, who other than Danzo learned vacuum jutsus? Was it Hiruzen's younger son? Jin shook his head and said, his fighting style and physique were very different. He is probably much younger, someone who didn't participate or didn't gain any fame in the Third Great Ninja War. Foshi interrupted the conversation and said, he was the spectral swordsman who gained fame over the last year. As suspected, he was from Konoha. Onoki frowned and said, Konoha always raises new talent. Fortunately, I sent you. Did you bring his body back? Roshi plainly replied, unfortunately, I couldn't kill him. Kitsuchi was surprised. He asked, even you couldn't kill him? Roshi's strength was above his own and on par with Hon's. If he couldn't kill him, it meant that only one person in Iwa could kill him. His eyes moved towards Onoki, who looked visibly angry. Onoki got up and scolded, don't you feel any shame in admitting that so bluntly? How did he get away from you? Tell me everything that happened. Oh, he immediately sat back in his chair and said in a pitiful voice, I pulled my back again. Roshi sighed at his old Kaiju's antics and narrated his fight with Fujin. His words shocked Kitsuchi and Onoki. Both their expressions became grim. They recalled that in the past, Minato had managed to escape from tailed beast bombs as well. After thinking for a bit, Onoki sighed and said, another fearsome talent has appeared in Konoha, and he will be even more troublesome due to his wind nature. Kitsuchi, get to work and find out who this ninja is, also make plans to eliminate him, considering his speed. Hiruzen might be planning on making him the next Yellow Flash. He needs to be eliminated before the start of the next war, and send some spies to check on Konoha's current strength. They are acting too brazenly. I am afraid that their strength might have already recovered sufficiently enough to start the next Great War, or at least close to it. Kitsuchi nodded. Roshi waved the letter and asked, what should we do about this? Onoki replied, I will just reply that the information is false. Even if Kuza provides proof, what can they do? Jin became a bit serious and asked, but what if the daimyo gets offended and decreases our budget like what happened to Suna? Onoki scoffed and replied, do you think I'm as weak and stupid as Rasa? The Earth Daimyo wouldn't dare to do something like that. If he dares to, I'll just reduce him and all the nobles to dust. Kitsuchi and Roshi weren't surprised by the claim. However, Jin's eyes widened. But he didn't say anything. After all, though Onoki often suffered from back pain and looked silly, he was still his Kaige. Onoki noticed his expression and said, you're thinking too much. Even if I kill the daimyo, we won't suffer any consequences. After all, Rasa looks like he wants to do the same. If I do it, he will kill the wind daimyo as well. The water daimyo currently holds no power, so only Konoha and Kumo can try to attack us and Suna. But there is no way they can cooperate properly with each other. It's more likely that Kumo will take the opportunity to attack Konoha. Though we may enter the Fourth Great Ninja War, our strength will not be affected. Jin understood the situation and said, I didn't think about it so deeply. Kitsuchi added, but our relations with the daimyo are quite good, so things won't deteriorate to that extent. Onoki nodded and said, so you don't need to worry about this. Leave and treat your arm first. Jin nodded. The meeting ended. Onoki wrote a reply to the daimyo, denying the accusations. He wrote a letter to Ide Tomoki as well. Chapter 310 Consequences. Mount Muteki. Fujin rested the entire day and left Mount Muteki the next day on Kaito's back. While flying high in the sky, Kaito asked, have you ever toured outside the continent you live on? Fujin replied, nope, I haven't even visited my continent entirely. Though his time in the Ambu had him make several trips, they were mostly within the Land of Fire and the weaker countries surrounding it. He hadn't visited the Land of Water, Earth and Lightning much, and there were still some countries beyond them. Kato replied. Then you will be in for a hell of a ride. Enjoy the scenery. I'll explain some important locations to you. Fujin replied. Cool, I always wondered how the world outside the elemental nations is. He thought, I wonder how it will compare to my previous world, and whether there are other civilizations in this world. Kato flew the entire day without needing to rest. As someone who was addicted to roaming around the world, Kato could fly for over 3 days without rest. Fujin rested his body while watching below. Most of what he observed was just a never-ending ocean. But there were many islands that were full of life. However, Fujin didn't notice a single human living there. He asked, Kato, do no humans live outside the continent I live on? Kato replied, I don't recall seeing any, but I have barely seen around 15 to 20% of the world, so there might be some in other places, but the chances are low. Fujin was puzzled. He asked, why is the chance low? Kato smirked and answered, you will understand it soon. Fujin sighed. He recalled that Kaito loved showing rather than telling. The two continued their journey. It was his way of making others accompany him, rather than losing interest after hearing the answer. Though Fujin was stuck with him regardless, his habit couldn't be changed so easily. Land of Grass, Mikosuo Town-eyed Tomoki was sitting in his office. It was already late in the evening. He had 2 letters in front of him. One was from Onoki, while the other was from Hiroshi, and his expression was very ugly. He thought, these guys, Hiroshi has left me with no choice. Though he hasn't asked me to admit that I colluded with Iwa, the price he is asking me to pay is unreasonable. My family will have no chance of rising any further for decades. Instead, we may have difficulty maintaining power here as well, but Chichikal's proposal is too drastic. He said that Ayla won't be able to support me any longer, so he is recommending breaking off from the Land of Grass and becoming a part of the Land of Earth. If I do that, I will be able to maintain all my current territory. In addition, I can also get more lands in the future if Igawaka is successful in war. He fell into a thought. After a long time, his expression hardened. He muttered, Kasagaka is leaving me with no future, but Idawaka has not only promised me a better future, but they aren't even trying to force me to make a decision, though I don't want to betray my birthplace. The choice I have to make is obvious. He immediately called 3 of the 5 most influential nobles in the city. They were the closest to him and his family. Half an hour later, Tomoki, all his family members, and 3 nobles gathered in the meeting room. Tomoki explained to them the contents of the 2 letters and informed them about his decision to join the Land of Earth. His declaration shocked everyone in the room. No one even considered such a drastic step. But after thinking for a bit, his family members agreed with his decision. Just the nobles hadn't said anything. A couple of them were extremely opposed to the idea. Hiroshi's restrictions would restrict the Ide family and not them. However, the 3rd noble got up and walked to Tomoki. He bowed and said, Tomoki-sama, no matter what you decide, my Sato family will always support your decision. A smile appeared on Tomoki's face. He said, I am honored to have a loyal friend like you, Sato Suya. He looked towards the remaining 2 nobles. They immediately cursed in their mind, this fucking bootlicker. They were heavily outnumbered by the Ide family in that small room. Both knew that they wouldn't leave alive if they didn't agree. Just when they were about to speak, their eyes widened in shock. Tomoki had a look of disbelief on his face as his eyes moved and landed on Sato Suya. Suya had stabbed a knife in his chest when he was looking at the other 2 nobles. He asked in disbelief. Why? Suya looked into his eyes and said, Hiroshi-sama instructed me to pass a message. These are the consequences of betraying the village. Those were the last words Tomoki heard before closing his eyes forever. His family finally snapped out of shock. 2 teenagers shouted in grief with tears running down their cheeks. Father, at the same time, more than a dozen ninjas rushed at Suya with killing intent. However, Suya was unmoved. 6 ninjas appeared next to him. They were elites from Kasagaka that were sent by Hiroshi. Within minutes, every member of the Ide family, no matter if they were old or young, male or female, guilty or innocent, were all killed. Sato Suya watched the slaughter without a trace of pity in his eyes. He looked at the 2 nobles and said, by the command of Kasagaka and Daimyo, the Sato family will be in charge of Mikosuo from now. Do you have any objections? Both immediately shook their heads. They were still in shock at how swiftly and brutally the Ide family was eliminated. Suya said, good, spread the word around the town. The Ide family betrayed Kasagaka by colluding with Igawaka and killing Kagawa Noriekuis. As a result, they were eliminated. I will be the new lord of the city. Both nodded and immediately left the slaughterhouse. After leaving, one said, I never thought that Suya would betray Tomoki for power. The other shook his head and replied, from the performance, it might be more appropriate to say that he was a pawn Kusagaka planted next to Tomochi long ago. It's scary to think about. I'm glad that neither of us decided to betray our country. We need to check the backgrounds of our subordinates once again. I don't want to die as miserably as the Ide family. The news of Tomochi's betrayal spread like wildfire in Mikosuo, and then throughout the Land of Grass. His death directly crushed Onoki's plans. The citizens of the Land of Grass also began hating Igawaka for pulling such a stunt in their country. However, Onoki wasn't bothered much. After all, Igawaka's reputation in the Land of Grass was already very bad. It didn't have any effect on him if it worsened any further. After all, why would it matter if an ant hated you a little or a lot? Both situations were the same in Onoki's eyes. Round the time Tomochi was killed, Yugo Fumito and Buniro finally reached Konoha. They reported to Hiruzen and informed him about how the mission went. Hiruzen had already received a letter from Daimyo, so he had some ideas, but their report cleared the picture for him. His expression became grim as he analyzed. Why did Onoki send Roshi on such a simple mission? Was he aiming for something else? And where is Fujin? He looked at the trio and asked, which seal did Turtle give you? Yugo replied, Captain said that it was a simple seal he created himself. If he crushed the seal that was with him, it would cause our tags to vibrate and burn. Hiruzen asked, what if it was destroyed? Yugo replied, in that case our tags wouldn't activate. Hiruzen eased a bit and thought, this means that he shouldn't have died. I was worried. Roshi is very strong. He can pose a danger to me as well. As for those seals, I recall a couple of simpler seals. I guess he combined two to create this effect. It is very convenient to pass simple instructions. He said, all right, you can leave. Until Turtle returns, take a break. The group nodded and left. They returned to their amber room and changed into their usual attire. Buniro asked, is there anything we should do? He was worried. It was the first time that he returned from a mission with one person short. Fumito shook his head and asked, what can we do in this situation? Yugo added, we can't help Captain. The only thing we can do is train harder so that the next time we can help the Captain instead of just escaping. Fumito nodded. Buniro decided, I thought that I already trained hard. I will need to train harder, otherwise I might never be able to catch up to him. Determined, all three dispersed. Unknowingly, Fujin added fuel to the fire burning in the hearts of his three subordinates. If Hiruzen knew it, he would be extremely pleased with his decision to assign them under Fujin. Chapter 311 The Dangerous World. While the Ide family was eliminated and his subordinates returned to the village, Fujin was enjoying flying under the starry sky. This journey expanded his horizons a lot. Kaito had shown him various sights and numerous wild beasts, including some species he had never seen before. He even informed Fujin about locations and information of stronger wild beasts from whom he stayed away. Fujin saw a couple of mountain ranges that were on par with Mount Muteki in height. Finally, around midnight, they reached a location from where they could see nothing but water. There wasn't a single island in sight. Kaito suddenly flew very high in the sky. He said, this is the sea surrounding the elemental nation continent. For thousands of kilometers, there is nothing but water. I haven't seen a single island in this area. This is one of the reasons why I said that the chances of finding humans elsewhere are low. After all, who would continue sailing for thousands of kilometers, despite finding nothing but water? Fujin fell into thought. He analyzed. Though this world doesn't have aircraft, the ships are quite well developed, though they are poor technologically as compared to my previous world. Especially in maps and radars, it should be better than what was in the medieval era in my world. In addition, they are much stronger in terms of defense due to ninjas. Surely there would have been some adventurous folks who made it all the way through, he asked. What are the other reasons? Kaito chuckled and replied in an evil tone. These oceans have terrifying beasts living within them. I have seen at least 13 who are as strong as my father. Some are even stronger, even if someone as strong as you sailed these oceans. The chances of making it through alive would be very low, and I am not even considering the natural calamities that suddenly happen in the ocean. Numerous times I have seen a giant whirlpool forming out of nowhere. At times, a giant tide arises without any prior signs. Even if a ninja strong enough to defeat the stronger beasts and overcome any calamity sailed, they would have to suffer countless attacks from smaller beings in the ocean. They will definitely damage the ship and leave you stranded in the middle of the ocean. Eventually, all of them will die. Fujin was surprised by the answer. He hadn't expected the calm ocean to be so dangerous. However, instead of being afraid, he let out a chuckle and said, perhaps after the wars are over, I should build a good ship, gather a few friends. Wear a straw hat and sail these waters. Ha ha ha, Kaito asked. Wear straw hat. Fujin replied, you won't understand. Kaito was confused, but he replied, all right, call me if you do so. That sounds like an interesting adventure. Fujin replied, sure, Kaito said in a mocking tone. Though I won't join you, I would love to see you struggle from the sky. If you die, I'll be sure to weep for you, and inform everyone back home about your heroic demise. Fujin had a deadpan expression. He thought that Kaito was genuinely interested in that adventure. He replied, don't worry, if I am in such deep trouble, I will be sure to summon you down. I'm sure those gigantic beasts would prefer eating someone big instead of someone tiny like me. The two continued their banter all night. After all, Fujin couldn't sleep due to the soldier pill, and there was nothing interesting to see other than the stars in the sky. The night slowly faded away as the first glimmers of dawn lit up the horizon, painting the vast ocean below in hues of gold and pink. The first rays of sunlight kissed the water, setting it ablaze with 1,000 shimmering lights. A sense of serenity washed over Fujin as the vast expanse filled with awe-inspiring solitude. A smile appeared on Kaito's face. He said, no matter how many times I see this, it always feels as serene and refreshing as the first time. It's one of the reasons why I fly so much. Fujin nodded. The sight reminded Fujin of the first time he rode on Ryu. Noticing how engrossed Fujin was, Kaito let out a chuckle and said, look towards the right. Fujin saw to his right but couldn't see anything. Kaito said, it's very far, use your chakra. Fujin's eyes began glowing as he focused chakra into his eyes. As there were no obstacles, he was able to see for extremely long distances. At the same time, Kaito began flying higher into the sky. At first, Fujin enjoyed the sight of sunlight grazing the ocean surface. However, as Kaito kept going higher, he noticed a strange wave. Despite traveling for so long, he hadn't seen any waves in the ocean. It was extremely still. As Kaito kept flying higher, Fujin finally understood what the strange wave was. His eyes widened in surprise. It was a whirlpool. He muttered, what a fucking gigantic whirlpool. Kaito agreed. He said, that whirlpool always changes in size. At the smallest, it has a radius of 25 kilometers, and at its highest size, it exceeds 100 kilometers in radius. Underneath it lives a fearsome beast. It is a 9-headed hydra. The entire whirlpool is caused by it. Fujin was stunned. He asked, that freaking thing is caused by an animal. Kaito nodded and said, round 200 years ago, my grandfather and 3 of his siblings were attacked by it when they were flying over. Father said that all 4 of them were as strong as he is now. And still they were defeated. They barely managed to make it out alive and were severely injured. From that moment, flying over that whirlpool is forbidden for us. Fujin replied, I am surprised that flying over this ocean isn't forbidden for you, considering that it was that strong 200 years ago. If it is that strong, then it is almost as strong as the tailed beasts. Without the tailed beast bomb, it might even have an advantage. Kaito said, I don't know what that attack is, but our sage did say that the tailed beasts are stronger, but I haven't seen either of them in action. So I can't give my opinion. Fujin thought, it will be interesting to see what would happen if I drop Isobu in this whirlpool. Will it kill the beast or force it to withdraw? Or will it be forced to retreat? And how much damage will it take? Suddenly, he had an idea. Now that I think about it, this might be a very easy way to subdue Isobu. Just have to move him here and make these two fight. Setsu shouldn't be able to keep an eye on this place. It is the perfect plan, or would have been if I had any means of transporting Isobu so far. Even the flying thunder god shouldn't allow me to do that unless my chakra is at a ridiculous level. He looked at the whirlpool and wondered, were those whales I saw while using the summoning jutsu from this ocean as well? Now that I think about it, it's fortunate that I appeared there and not next to this monster. That water flow alone is insane. No ship will be able to survive that, let alone face that beast inside. Kaito continued flying forward. En route, he shared the location of another strong beast. This one wasn't as strong as the Hydra but still very strong. By afternoon, they finally saw land. Fujin observed the land but couldn't identify where it was. He asked, which country is this? Kaito replied, this should be an island in the land of water. Fujin replied, I see, so Mount Muteki is to the east of this continent. Kaito nodded and said, yes, though more like it is on the other side of this world. You'll reach it even if you fly west, but the journey is around twice as long. Fujin replied, all right. At the same time he thought, now that I think about it, I haven't ever been to the land of water. A shame that I can't start my organization yet. This would have been the best place to recruit from. I might have even found a few kids with Keki Genkai with some luck. That said, I wonder how Shigeki is doing. Unknown to Fujin, his former sensei was doing the very same thing in the Land of Water. Except for the fact that it was a mission from the village rather than some personal ambition, Fujin decided against stopping in the Land of Water. After all, he had already created conflicts in the remaining 3 major villages. Against Kumo, his squad had killed over a dozen ninjas, which was followed by Juai killing more than 250. Against Suma, he had created a giant mess, and not long ago, his team killed 19 Iwa ninjas and injured an elite Junin. He didn't want to create a mess in Kiri as well. By evening, Kato flew over the vast Land of Water and landed inside the Land of Fire. The two bade farewell. Fujin stretched his body and thought, "This is the first time I flew for almost 36 hours straight. Luckily his back is quite comfortable to lay on." He moved towards Konoha. The spot Kato dropped him at was very close to it, so he reached within an hour and directly went to see Hiruzen. Chapter 312 Konoha under attack. Hiruzen was surprised to see Fujin return so quickly. He emptied his office and asked, "So, how was the fight with a Jinwekirik?" Fujin sighed and said, "Very difficult. I almost died. Why isn't there any information about Roshi being able to use the tailed beast bomb?" "He caught me off guard." Hiruzen let out a sigh as well. He answered, "The abilities of Jinwekirik are too strong. If I put it out in public, then panic will spread among the citizens. Even with the little information everyone has, they are still terrified." Fujin furrowed his eyebrows. He said, "I can understand about hiding it from common people, but why are Ambu and Ambu captains not informed about them?" Hiruzen replied, "Because you are not supposed to engage them. Even an elite Junin has to retreat on sight. Only rank S ninjas have the ability and permission to engage with them. Even a Jinwekirik who has no control over their tailed beast can lose control and unleash its full strength." Fujin thought for a bit and said, "That makes sense, but there's still no reason to hide the information. There are so many ways with which we can neutralize them before they can unleash their full power." Hiruzen's expression hardened. He replied, "You shouldn't be neutralizing them. That can directly lead to a major war. Jinhukaris are the backbone of those countries. Harm them, and other countries will think that we are decreasing their strength in preparations for a war. It will cause them to ally with other countries." A frown appeared on Fujin's face. He asked, "But isn't that Ambu's job? Every mission I took in the last couple of years restricted other villages in one way or the other." Hiruzen shook his head and answered, "All those acts were subtle. They left no links or proofs pointing towards us, and they were far from the bottom line of other countries." Hiruzen could see that Fujin wasn't being combative with those questions, otherwise he might have had to re-evaluate Fujin. Fujin replied, "All right, but pass me information on the other Jinwekirik. I don't want to be short on information again." Hiruzen nodded and asked, "This matter aside, describe the battle between you and Roshi." Fujin nodded and briefly narrated the battle. Though he didn't show it on his face, Hiruzen was shocked to know that Roshi had to resort to that form to defeat Fujin. Fujin's performance far exceeded what Hiruzen had expected. He said, "You did well, don't be discouraged by the result. Roshi is a veteran of 2 great wars and one of the strongest ninjas in Ila. But avoid fighting Jinhukaris. Even if it was someone weaker, they will give up control to the beast inside them when their life is at risk. When that happens, not only will you be at risk, but so will your teammates and the common citizens around that place." Fujin nodded and said, "I need some time off. I'll need to get my back looked at." Hiruzen nodded and said, "Take the next 5 days off, but meet up with your team once and meet up with Eagle tomorrow or someday later. He will have a scroll with the necessary information. I have another rank S mission planned for you after 5 days. It won't be an Amber mission, but a secret mission in another squad that I will assemble, so get back into your best shape." Fujin thought, "I was hoping for at least 5 weeks, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like he will let go of me that easily. Sigh, if I didn't need the wind crystals and access to Sectioner, I would have quit right away, though I don't think he would stop me from accessing the library. I don't see him allowing me to use the training rooms after quitting the Ambu." He replied, "All right." He left the office and went straight to the Konoha hospital. Meanwhile, Hiruzen turned his attention to the report on his table and thought, no wonder Onoki didn't try harder to increase his influence in Miko's duo. They suffered a thorough defeat despite Roshi winning against Fujin. And the information regarding Fujin is far more valuable than a pointless town. Having been a part of every great ninja war, Hiruzen knew what the most important factors in the war were, and as someone with a similar level of experience, Onoki also understood it. Once a ninja like Fujin matured, he would be a nightmare on the battlefield. Not only could he cut through the enemy ranks with ease, but he could also stay back and amplify the fire jutsus of thousands of ninjas from Konoha. Both would bring a qualitative change to Konoha's forces. Alternatively, he could also be assigned to assassinate stronger ninjas in enemy ranks. Hiruzen thought, if he continues at this trajectory, Fujin's ability to create an impact on the battlefield will far exceed Kakashi. It will be under only Minato and Tsunane's abilities. Still, he is a bit too radical in his ways. Though it might be my fault considering the missions I have been assigning him, I will need to give some diplomatic missions to tone down his aggressive means. Not to mention, he already has sufficient experience in fighting and elimination missions. Any more won't be much helpful unless he gets to face elite Junons or rank S ninjas. But that would be very risky. Fujin rested the night in the hospital. Hiruzen ensured that the best medical ninjas tended to him. His back was inspected and healed several times until it completely felt normal. To his surprise, the last person who healed him was a familiar face. Isamu looked at Fujin and said, "When Lord Hokage asked me to check up on a patient, I didn't expect it to be you, Fujin." Fujin looked at Isamu and said with a smile, "Isamu-sensei. It's good to see you after a long while," Isamu said with a grumpy tone. "Good my ass, you didn't even come to say hi. I and Yoshi-sensei were still hopeful for you becoming a medical ninja." Fujin shrugged and said, "I already told you I am not interested as of now. Besides, I don't have any time. Lord Hokage keeps sending me on missions." Isamu replied, "Obviously, you are still young. Besides, you are lucky to have not faced any war. Otherwise, you have to keep going even when you are injured or exhausted." Fujin nodded. However, unlike others, he knew that the next great war was still quite far away, so he wasn't concerned at that moment. Isamu asked, "So, where were you injured?" Fujin replied, "On my back, around 3 days ago. I had 3 broken ribs, but I healed them. Just came here to ensure everything is fine." "But for some reason, you are the 4th medical ninja to show up here," Isamu thought. "Obviously that reason is Lord Hokage. It looks like he needs Fujin ready for a mission rather quickly." Isamu inspected Fujin back. The bones were already healed properly. However, Isamu was taken aback after inspecting his back with chakra. He wondered, how much does this kid train? Looking at his muscles and their wear and tear, it's as if he has trained continuously for over a decade. Isamu was surprised. Extremely few ninjas would put their bodies through such continuous training for such a long period. Even if someone was enthusiastic, they would lose that enthusiasm in a year or two. After all, after the initial boost in strength, the effects of training on the body diminish a lot. No visible effects would be seen. Most ninjas would stop training their bodies at that stage and focus on other skills. Isamu didn't say anything and slowly healed the hidden issues and internal trauma that were caused due to constant training and fighting. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration. No wonder Lord Hokage values him so much, if someone learning medical ninjutsu also had such dedication. We might have another ninja of the same caliber as Lady Tsunade. As his back slowly healed, Fujin's back felt very relaxed. In fact, he had never felt that good in either of his lives. Isamu said, "You don't have any major injuries and I treated some old ones. Rest for the next couple of days. You can return back to training or missions." Fujin got up and nodded. He said, "Thank you. I don't recall my back ever feeling this good." Isamu replied, "Every time you train or fight, some trauma accumulates in your body. Over time, it accumulates and can cause hidden injuries. If you train a lot, then visit me every 3 months or so. Your progress will become much faster and threats to your body will decrease if you get checked up once in a while." Fujin nodded and replied, "All right." Isamu turned around to leave. A smile formed on his face as he walked out of the door. He said, "Normally I'd charge 500,000 ryo for that treatment. But since I know you so well and want you to become a medical ninja, I will offer you a 50% discount." Take care. In a flash he disappeared. Fujin watched with a deadpan expression. He cursed, "This damned world, every freaking one is shameless." Fortunately, money wasn't an issue for Fujin. Even if he ever ran short on it, he knew numerous corrupt nobles and officials. He wouldn't bother thinking twice before stealing from them. Fujin left the hospital in the morning thinking, "Isamu only asked me to rest physically. Should I continue Fuin Jutsu training?" Fujin pondered for a bit before shaking his head. He decided, "I should take a proper rest. After all, even my brain needs some rest. Perhaps a decent break would help me master those seals even faster. Oh well, time to indulge in some delicacies." Suddenly, Fujin's eyes moved and landed on a mask shop to his right. His eyes landed on a small ball that was releasing some smoke and the shopkeeper who was inspecting it. A moment later, the ball exploded with a loud sound, engulfing the shopkeeper and some early morning customers around him in smoke. Chapter 313 What Moves? Fujin didn't have any time to rescue them. He instinctively moved away and observed from a distance with a frown on his face. He wondered, someone is planting explosions inside Konoha, but who? Don't tell me that Ila or Suna went crazy and decided to retaliate this way. Wait, what's this? To Fujin's surprise, none of the people were harmed by the explosion. Instead, the people engulfed by the smoke began coughing. Soon after, they covered their nose and mouth and ran out while feeling nauseated. Fujin had a weird expression upon seeing that sight. His eyes moved and landed on a corner of the street. He chuckled and muttered, "Now it makes sense. Still, my missions lately have been so intense that I almost considered this an attack. I really need a long break." In the corner, a blonde goofball was struggling to contain his laughter. He jumped out and laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha ha, you fell for it." Without waiting for another second, he immediately began running away. Fujin watched in amusement as the shopkeeper ran behind him but was obviously much slower. Fujin's eyelids twitched as he observed, "This kid, he is purposefully moving slowly so that the old man can chase him. I almost forgot how much of an attention seeker he was before becoming a ninja." Fujin suddenly had an idea. A malicious smile appeared on his face as he decided, if Hiruzen doesn't give me access to the Flying Thunder God Jutsu after I become a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster, I will teach Naruto a few simple wind jutsus and give him some ideas to prank Hiruzen. That would be a satisfying sight. A shame that the old fox is just too damn capable. Otherwise, I would have definitely hidden around to click some pictures, haha, but that will have to wait for another year or so. He should be entering the penultimate year in the academy after the vacation. If I help him now and he somehow passes this year, then most of my future knowledge might become useless. That said, I doubt Hiruzen would allow him to graduate early even if he does well. Especially considering that the current situation is quite peaceful, despite the occasional movements. Not to mention, he might already have some ideas about putting him and Sasuke on the same team under Kakashi. Fujin ignored the incident and walked to Yakiniko for a large meal. He spent the next couple of days visiting his favorite restaurants, spas and hot springs in Konoha, to relax his mind and body. On the third day, 60 shadow clones began learning new seals, while he did his intense morning workout and called his squad for a meeting in their assigned room. While waiting for them, he met up with Eagle and took the scroll that had information related to the Jinhyukaris. While reading, his teammates arrived one by one. In a few minutes, all four were sitting in that room. Buniro looked at Fujin and sighed in relief secretly. "Fortunately, he is fine. I was worried for him." Yugo and Fumito were also glad to see him. Fujin asked, "So, did anything happen after I asked you to retreat?" Yugo answered, "Nothing much of importance. Ryochi asked us to not spread the news, but now the decision lies with Lord Hokage." Fujin nodded and said, "True. Besides, I doubt such information can even be hidden." Fumito asked, "Why did you burn that seal?" Fujin answered, "I miscalculated his strength. He was too strong for me, so I had to retreat in a different direction." Buniro exclaimed in surprise. "He was stronger than even you." Fujin shrugged and replied, "There are numerous people who are stronger than me. Anyways, it's good to see that all of us are fine. We may not get a mission for a few days, so use this time to train or rest. I have a feeling that we will have very busy months ahead." Buniro replied, "All right." The others nodded. Fujin dismissed them. After they left, Fujin looked at his turtle mask and pondered, "I used this mask to prevent being identified, but it was inevitable to be linked to the spectral swordsman after such a long fight. I exposed most of my cards as well. I might not have the element of surprise from now onwards. In fact, I am afraid that my real identity could be compromised as well. After all, how many ninjas use vacuum jutsus? Now, should I still with this mask or change it again?" Fujin thought for a bit before shaking his head. He decided, "It's pointless. If my new mask is leaked, then the details of my teammates will also be leaked, and Yugao's purple hair is just too easy to recognize. Oh well, it doesn't matter much, at the end of the day. Strength is all that matters. Even if they know me, how many can resist or defeat me like Roshi? And if it is needed, we can all use transformation jutsu to prevent others from identifying us." Having made his decision, Fujin put the mask back in his pouch. He was about to leave when Yugo entered the room again. Fujin was puzzled. He asked, did you forget something? Yugo replied, no, I just can't resist my curiosity. My apologies for being unprofessional, but are you really the spectral swordsman? Had Fujin not analyzed? He would have denied it, but since it wouldn't have much effect, he nodded and said, you are too obsessed with your sword. Yeah, I am. But don't spread it around. Yugo nodded. After catching a glimpse of his fight with Roshi, she had expected it to be the truth. However, she couldn't help but think, I never would have guessed that the infamous spectral swordsman would be someone so younger than me. She immediately asked, can you teach me swordplay? Fujin immediately shook his head. He barely had any time for himself. How could he waste it training someone else? But he knew that he couldn't deny so bluntly. He immediately thought of a convenient excuse and replied, my style is completely different than yours. I won't be able to teach you. You should continue learning from the one you currently are. A frown formed on Yugao's face. She quickly said, I know that I can't change my style now, but I can still learn a few moves from you and incorporate them into my swordplay. Fujin tilted his head and asked, what do you mean by moves? Yuga was confused by the question. She answered, I mean something like my hazy moonlight or the dance of the crescent moon. Fujin shook his head and said, I don't know any sword moves. Yuga was surprised. She asked, what do you mean? Yuga had always assumed that Fujin wasn't taking her seriously. She never expected such an answer. Fujin chuckled and replied, what moves do you need to learn with a sword? It's a sword. It has sharp edges. Just grab the handle and hack or stab the ones you want dead, or block an incoming attack. It is very simple and uncomplicated. Isn't it? Yuga was stunned by the answer. She thought about it deeply. At first, it seemed like Fujin was completely bullshitted her. However, the more she thought, the more sense Fujin's answer made. She realized. That's right, other than slashing and blocking. There isn't anything to swordplay. Even my techniques can be broken down to just slashing. But is it really everything to his swordplay? This wasn't an answer Fujin had made up. In fact, it was something that he had realized when Renjiro was teaching him. Renjiro's own swordplay was based on this principle. When he had asked Renjiro his opinion on the various dance forms of swordplay, he had a similar answer. After thinking for numerous months, this was the answer Fujin had reached. His swordplay didn't have anything fancy. It was just plain old slashing and stabbing. He just added wind chakra to enhance its lethality to an extreme. While he did have some variations in flying slashes, those were more of a wind jutsu rather than a sword move. Yugo looked at Fujin, while recalling the wind slash released from his sword. Fujin noticed her gaze and realized what she was thinking. He said, that is everything to my swordplay. I just use chakra flow and change it to wind nature to enhance its sharpness and range. There are no other complications in my sword skills. Yuga thought for a long time. But couldn't think of a response. Fujin let out a sigh and said, that's why I said that you should stick with your current master. My ways will just confuse you. If you want, you can try to learn chakra flow to strengthen your current moves. But apart from that, there is nothing else I can contribute. Yugo calmed herself and replied, all right, thank you for the guidance. I'll stick with my current methods for now. Fujin nodded. That was indeed the best. She took her leave. Fujin sighed in relief. Fortunately, she didn't ask me to teach her chakra flow. Now, should I go raid the wind crystals in training rooms, or should I try improving my wind jutsus and perhaps creating new ones? Fujin already had a few ideas for new jutsus, and he had thought of proper training plans to learn them. However, he shook his head and decided, no, I won't be able to sustain training for a long time, as my clones have the majority of my chakra. I'll go raid those wind crystals. He moved to the wind training rooms and began meditating. Chapter 314 Infiltration. 3 days later, Fujin was summoned to Hiruzen's office. He quickly went to his office in his regular ninja outfit. After entering, he noticed that there were 4 other ninjas there. Yuga looked at Fujin and gave a small nod in acknowledgement. Fujin gave a small nod back. The other faces were familiar as well. They were Genma, Yamanaka Ken and the head of the TI department, Ibiki. Ken recognized Fujin instantly. After all, Fujin had left quite an impact on him during the mission, where Fujin acted as the bait against the bounty hunters. Ibiki and Genma looked at Fujin for a few seconds before recalling who he was. Ibiki was the first one to recognize him. He said, Suzuki Fujin, I didn't expect you to be assigned missions with us so soon. Genma nodded. Just like Ibiki, he recalled judging Fujin during the last round of the Chunin exams. He thought, I didn't expect him to become capable enough to be deployed on the same mission as us. Did he train his wind jutsus to such an extent that he can aid Junins? Or did he develop some other speciality? Fujin nodded and replied, "It's good to see you as well." He looked at Hiruzen and asked, "So, what's the secret mission?" Hiruzen looked at the door and said, "Wait for some time, there is still one ninja yet to arrive." Fujin nodded and waited patiently. After a couple of minutes, everyone looked at the door. Kakashi walked in and said in an unapologetic tone, "Sorry for being late. I was on my way here when I saw Black Cat cross my path. So I had to take a different route." Yugo, Ibiki, Ken and Genma gave Kakashi a deadpan look. Meanwhile, Fujin was confused. He wondered, "I know that he tends to be late by a few hours, so why is he apologizing for being late by just a couple of minutes?" Hiruzen replied, "It's fine. You are here after all. Close the door," he thought. "That is why I asked you to come 3 hours before everyone else." He looked at a corner of the room and said, "Leave and activate the privacy seals." The 4 amber guards, hiding in the room, immediately left the room. All windows were shut close, and seals were activated. Realizing the importance, everyone in the room became serious. Hiruzen said, "Recently, there have been sightings of some Suna ninjas sneaking into the Land of Fire. Their activity is especially high around the fire capital." Fujin immediately realized, "Is this in regards to those 6 unlucky fellows?" Hiruzen noticed Fujin's change of expression and said, "That's right, Fujin. Some time ago, when I was returning from a diplomatic visit, the patrol camp I was staying at was attacked by a squad of 6 Suna ninjas. They were neutralized, but more of them have entered the country. We have located the base they gather at. You 6 will be transforming into those 6 ninjas and entering that base. Your mission has 2 parts. Firstly, kill or neutralize every Suna ninja there. And secondly, gather information. You can check their memories or resort to any other means you want to." Apart from Fujin, who knew why the Suna was acting like this, the other ninjas were shocked. After all, Suna was supposed to be their ally. However, they didn't question Hiruzen. After all, every one of them was an active or former Ambu. They knew about the dark undercurrents that flow in the ninja world. Hiruzen provided everyone with more details about the 6 ninjas they were supposed to impersonate, the plans, expected enemies, and other minute details. In the end, he said, Kakashi will lead this mission. But since their leader Hideyoshi specialized in wind manipulation, and because Fujin saw him in action, Fujin will disguise as him. Everyone nodded. Since Fujin was suppressing his chakra, Ibiki and Junma were surprised that he was given such an important role. But both knew the importance of replicating minute behavior patterns during such missions, so they understood why Hiruzen asked him to do it. Since everyone had arrived prepared for the mission, the group left right away. They traveled for 6 hours straight before finally halting. Ken muttered, "A base so deep into the Land of Fire. They have guts." Ibiki replied, "It is safer to create a base here rather than in the border regions or close to any cities or towns. No one would suspect them normally, if it wasn't for that squad unluckily attacking Lord Hokage. We might not have found this base." Kakashi said, "That's enough chit-chat. We will first transform into the faces they were originally disguised as. When we are intercepted by the Suna ninjas, we will dismiss this transformation and transform ourselves into their original appearances at the same time." "Is everyone ready?" Everyone nodded. Kakashi instructed, "Good. Fujin, take the lead. Remember to act arrogant. As for others, keep a close eye. Once Fujin attacks, we will follow up. Kill without letting anyone run away." Everyone immediately transformed into the disguises that Hideyoshi and his teammates were using and continued moving towards the base. After traveling for another mile, they sensed a chakra field scanning them. They continued moving. Round half a mile from the base, 12 Suna ninjas appeared in front of them. Of course, all were disguised as Konoha ninjas. One of them spoke, "This is a restricted area by the order of Lord Hokage. Turn away or identify yourselves." Fujin snorted and said, "It's me." A smoke cloud appeared around him. His appearance transformed into Hideyoshi. At the same time, the other 5 also transformed. Yamanaka Ken transformed into their censor Namosa, while Ibiki transformed into Kanam. Seeing their appearances, the Suna ninjas sighed in relief. However, they were still vigilant. One of them transformed into his real appearance and said, "It's good to see that you are safe, Hideyoshi-sama. The council was worried about you since we haven't heard from you for over a month. They were even wondering if they should cancel the entire operation." Fujin walked ahead and said, "Yosuke, we were ambushed by that damned copy ninja. We were fooled. Somehow, that copy ninja had already escaped through all the perimeters we established. We fought several rounds with his squad and had to go into hiding." Yosuke was surprised. He asked, "You encountered the copy ninja. Doesn't that mean?" Fujin nodded and continued, yes, reindeer. We have to ask Lord Kazekage to stop wasting manpower there and focus here. Hearing the word reindeer, the Suna ninja sighed in relief. In order to prevent anyone from infiltrating their secret base, the Suna ninjas were made to follow a certain protocol. The first was to show their real face, the second was to call the name of the ninja who talked with them accurately, and the third was to call him reindeer. Since the conditions were satisfied, Yosuke said, "Welcome back Hideyoshi-sama. Please exert your chakra so that I can confirm your identity. While the above means were good enough in most circumstances, they weren't good enough in the Land of Fire. Konoha had the Yamanaka clan that could read memories. That is why Suna had placed a capable sensor in charge of the secret base. He remembered the chakra signatures of the important ninjas so that he could cross-identify them. Fujin exerted his chakra. The amount of chakra he exerted was just higher than the amount of chakra Hideyoshi had used against Choza. Yosuke observed him and nodded. A similar chakra signature, just more than the amount I saw last time, and shows off his affinity to wind. Just like I remember, looks like there shouldn't be any issue. He also asked Kanam and Namosa to show their chakra and identified both their chakras as well. As for the other three, he didn't remember. He said, "Come." However, Fujin interrupted him and said, "Enough wasting time. Let's go to the base. I have important information to report to Lord Kazekage. If we don't report this, then we will suffer during the next war." Yosuke nodded and quickly welcomed him to the base, while thinking, his arrogance is still the same. Suna's plan was almost foolproof. While some ninjas could replicate the chakra signatures as well, such ninjas were very rare. They would either be very capable sensors or experienced Junins. More importantly, reading memories from a dead ninja wouldn't allow a Yamanaka to copy their chakra signature. The ninja had to see and observe it properly. Only then they could do so. Unfortunately, Hideyoshi's squad ran into Hiruzen of all people. That encounter sealed the fate of all ninjas in the secret base. He was able to memorize the chakra signatures of all 6 ninjas at a glance and could replicate them well enough for all of Kakashi's team to copy it. Even Fujin had forgotten Hideyoshi's chakra signature and only managed to replicate it with Hiruzen's help. The Konoha ninjas walked into the base along with the Suna ninjas. Chapter 315. An intense confrontation. As they walked into the base, Fujin commanded, "Call everyone. I have important information. Konoha's forces have been moving. The coming period will be very critical. If we make a mistake, the entire operation will become a failure, and we may be wiped out." Yosuke realized the gravity of his words and nodded and said, "All right." He immediately asked a subordinate to call everyone. The group entered into an underground base. Within a minute, 28 Suna ninjas arrived in the meeting room. Fujin observed them and thought, Hiruzen's analysis was right. None of them is elite Junins. 11 are Junins, while the rest should be special Junins or close to that level. Yosuke said, "This is everyone currently here." Fujin nodded and asked, "How many have gone to the fire capital?" Yosuke answered, 9 have currently infiltrated the fire capital. 4 more have infiltrated other cities. Fujin had a grim expression. He said, "The other cities are fine, but Konoha has sent their Sannin Jiraiya the Gallant into the fire capital." The eyes of the Suna ninjas widened in fear. Though none of them had faced Jiraiya, they knew the horror of the Sannins. After all, one of the Sannin was directly responsible for Sunagakua's horrible defeat in the Third Great Ninja War against Konoha, forcing Sunagakure to sign an alliance agreement with Konoha. Yosuke said, "Whoa." Suddenly his eyes widened and he immediately ducked down. Among the 28 ninjas, only 12 others managed to react and quickly jumped or ducked. Taking advantage of their distraction after mentioning Jiraiya's name, Fujin used vacuum serial wave jutsu at the Suna ninjas. 15 died without even reacting. As soon as he attacked, the 5 Konoha ninjas flickered. A loud chirping-like sound was heard as Kakashi appeared in front of Yosuke. Yosuke saw the attack coming. Thoughts ran rapidly through his mind. Vacuum jutsu and lightning jutsu? They aren't Hideyoshi's squad. We were fooled. But how was Hideyoshi's squad killed? Not good. He wanted to fight back. Unfortunately, he was completely outmatched. Kakashi pierced his heart with the Chidori. Yugo flickered behind one of the Chunings that survived and slashed her sword towards the back of his neck. The Chunin quickly tried to move forward while throwing a shuriken behind him. Yugo moved forward while dodging the shuriken and cut his head off. At the same time, Ibiki also killed one Chunin, while Genma and Ken began fighting a Junin each. Fujin himself flickered in front of a Junin and slashed at him. The Junin had just dodged the vacuum wave. He grabbed his kunai and tried to block the sword. Unfortunately, Fujin sliced straight through the kunai. The Junin's eyes widened. He quickly stepped back and stretched his head backwards in order to dodge the sword. He managed to barely dodge the sword by a few millimeters. Unfortunately, his throat was still sliced through. The remaining Suna ninjas finally collected themselves and realized the grave danger they were in. Their survival instincts kicked in, and they began retaliating. Two Junins appeared focused on Kakashi and appeared on his sides. Wind release wind sword jutsu, wind release blade of wind jutsu. Seeing the dangerous lightning chakra on his arm which was still lodged in Yosaku's chest, they didn't dare to fight him using taijutsu or kenjutsu. Kakashi withdrew his arm, weaved a hand sign, and slammed his hands on the ground. The earth quickly raised up and formed a dome around him just in time. The wind blades hit the dome, leaving some scratches on it. At the same time, Ibiki and Yugo were also attacked by one Junin each. One Junin noticed the chakra flow on Fujin's sword. He grabbed his own sword and attacked Fujin. Wind chakra flowed through his sword as well. Meanwhile, one opened a scroll and made the confrontation hand seal. A wooden puppet that looked like a cactus appeared. It had needles sticking to its entire body. The Konoha ninjas were instantly alarmed. The last ninja retreated to the back of the room and crushed a seal. A bird was released, and it quickly flew out of the underground base. He began weaving hand signs. The puppeteer moved his fingers. 3 mouths opened up on the puppet. It fired needles at Fujin, Ibiki and Yugo. Almost instantly, all 3 aligned themselves such that they would be covered by the Suna ninjas who had attacked them, forcing the puppeteer to stop his attack. As soon as he stopped, the sound of Chidori was heard once again. Kakashi's hand pierced through the ground and grabbed the leg of one of the Junins who attacked him. Taking advantage of the cover of the earth dome, Kakashi had escaped underground and snuck under his opponent. He released a massive amount of lightning into his body. He was electrocuted to death on the spot. Fujin and his opponent fought with their swords. Fujin couldn't cut through his opponent's sword, but he wasn't worried. Using his position, Fujin built his chakra. His cheeks puffed up. His opponent, who had seen Fujin firing those dangerous waves, was alarmed. Wind release vacuum cannon jutsu. Fujin fired a vacuum cannon. His opponent was expecting an attack similar to air bullets and moved to his right preemptively. Unfortunately, he underestimated the power and speed behind Fujin's attack. The vacuum cannon hit his left arm and severed it in an instant. In addition, due to their alignment, the vacuum cannon was headed straight at the cactus puppet. The puppeteer couldn't even react as the jutsu annihilated the puppet. The vacuum cannon continued forward through the walls of the underground base for 20 meters before stopping. The attack horrified the puppeteer. He immediately focused his attention on Fujin. Meanwhile, Fujin thought, "Siek, I should have targeted the puppeteer instead." He didn't have any time to think about it or do a follow-up attack. Despite the loss and incredible pain, the Junin he was fighting didn't flinch. He immediately took advantage of the fact that Fujin was open on his left and attacked with the sword in his right hand. Fujin stepped to his right while raising his left hand. The seal on his bracer lit up and a sword appeared in his left hand as well. Almost instantly, wind chakra began flowing through his sword. His opponent's sword clashed with his and was stopped. His opponent's eyes widened. He screamed, "Impossible!" A smile appeared on Fujin's face. Now his opponent was completely open. His other sword immediately moved towards his opponent, aiming to hack him in two. Wind release air bullet jutsu. Fujin's smile soon changed into annoyance, and he immediately jumped backwards. Realizing their threat, the Suna Junin, who sent the bird out, targeted Fujin and Kakashi. 6 bullets were fired at each of them. Kakashi immediately withdrew back under the ground to avoid the attack. As for Fujin, he stepped backwards and maneuvered his body to dodge all 6 air bullets in time. Fujin's opponent attacked him again. At the same time, the puppeteer grabbed another scroll while throwing a purple ball into the hole that Kakashi had escaped into. He made the confrontation hand sign once again. Another puppet appeared while the purple ball exploded. Releasing poisonous gas into the hole, Kakashi immediately jumped out from another spot and slammed his hands on the ground again. Both the holes in the ground were sealed, trapping the poisonous gas underground. However, that was enough time for the puppeteer to take control of the second puppet. It was shaped like a crocodile. It opened its mouth and shot needles at Kakashi. At the same time, the other Junin used the blade of wind jutsu to cut off Kakashi's escape route. Kakashi slammed his hands on the ground once again. A wall rose in front of him. blocking all the needles. Since the blades of wind were aimed at his escape routes, he didn't need to avoid them. The puppeteer looked at Kakashi and Fujin and thought with a frown on his face, the battle has entered a deadlock. I need to poison one of them quickly. Otherwise, we may be wiped out here. Unfortunately for him, the situation didn't last. Genma and Ibiki neutralized their opponents at the same time. Almost instantly, they sneak attacked the ones fighting Yugao and Ken. Realizing the danger, the Suna ninja at the back shot air bullets at Ibiki and Genma to slow them down. The crocodile puppet launched its poisonous scales at them as well, blocking them and saving the lives of the Junins fighting Yugao and Ken. Unfortunately, this reduced the pressure on Fujin, without the support from the puppeteer and the wind ninja hidden in the back. Fujin went on the attack immediately. He slashed his right sword vertically at his opponent's head. Realizing the danger, the opponent blocked it with his own sword. However, at the same time, he saw Fujin's other sword heading at his waist. He immediately jumped up and barely managed to dodge it as well. Unfortunately, Fujin shot an air bullet at point-blank range. Due to the close range and his feet being off the ground, he couldn't dodge. It pierced his heart, and he dropped dead. At the same time, Kakashi neutralized the Junin that was engaging him. Both turned their gaze towards Puppeteer and the ninja hiding behind him. Their gaze made their scalps tingle in fear. Chapter 316 Ruthlessness. After the first round of assaults, Suna had 8 ninjas against Kanoha's 6. But when Ibiki and Genma killed their opponents, they equalized the numbers, and after Kakashi and Fujin killed their opponents, it became 4 vs 6. All Suna ninjas realized the inevitable result of that fight. The puppeteer observed the situation. His heart ached at the fact that 24 of his fellow ninjas had been killed in less than a couple of minutes. He looked at Kakashi, who had stopped disguising himself hatefully and shouted, "Retreat!" The Suna ninja in the rear immediately left the base. The ones fighting Yugao and Ken also tried retreating but were stopped by Ibiki and Genma. At the same time, Fujin and Kakashi moved towards the puppeteer. However, their eyes widened and both stopped. The puppeteer made the confrontation hand seal. His crocodile puppet exploded. Numerous hidden mechanisms were fired in all directions. Even the 2 Suna ninjas in the room were targeted. At the same time, purple gas began spreading out. Fujin and Kakashi were shocked at the brutality of the attack. The first person who was hit was the puppeteer himself. His body was turned into a pincushion. Both Kakashi and Fujin immediately jumped underground. So did the remaining 4 Konoha ninjas and one of the 2 Suna ninjas, but surrounded by 4 Konoha ninjas. He was killed as well. Kakashi and Fujin ignored that ninja and immediately traveled far away from the base before exiting the ground. Fujin immediately spread his chakra field. A frown formed on his face as he said, "I can't sense him. He must be good at wind instantaneous body jutsu." Kakashi nodded and said, the puppeteer provided a good opportunity for him to escape. Who'd have thought that he'd be so ruthless? Fujin nodded. There were numerous people who could act ruthlessly against others who are weaker or helpless, but to be the same with themselves was extremely rare. In half a minute, their allies crawled out of the ground as well. Ibiki looked around and asked, "He managed to run away?" Kakashi nodded. Ibiki sighed. "This means that the mission wasn't entirely successful. With him on the run, we won't be able to use this base as a trap to catch and kill any Suna ninjas that might return here." Kakashi replied, "They had managed to send a message out. It would have been tough to do that even if we killed him. It's fine. I'm just glad that all of us are all right. The fight was much tougher than I had anticipated." Everyone nodded, despite the overwhelming victory. The fight was very close. One mistake could have caused a few deaths on their side. Ibiki turned his attention towards Fujin. Though there was no expression on his face, he was shocked by Fujin's abilities. He thought, "This kid is very good. I thought that he'd be the weakest in the group. But he is second just to Kakashi." No, in terms of impact, it was higher than even Kakashi. After all, that first attack killed more than half of them and allowed us to kill a few more. Despite using such a deadly jutsu, there was almost no sign of him preparing it. No chakra leak was detected, and he properly diverted their attention just before attacking. Ajuma had the same thoughts running through his mind. With a chuckle, he thought, "I guess our evaluation was incorrect. Using him as a support would be a big waste of his talents. I guess no one's a better judge than Lord Hokage." He looked at Yugo and analyzed. I had heard that Yugo was recently assigned to a different ambush squad, and seeing how familiar they acted with each other on our way here, they should be in the same squad. Or more likely, she should be in his squad. Fujin agreed with Kakashi as well. He thought, these guys were very good. I was expecting to cut through them with ease as there wasn't any elite Junin among their ranks. I guess fighting underground in a small room played a huge role. It heavily restricted movements and prevented me from taking advantage of my speed. If I had attacked in the open, I wouldn't have been at any risk. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible to do so in these circumstances. Apart from the underground base, they wouldn't have assembled at any other spot. Kakashi looked towards the base and said, the poison will begin leaking into the surroundings. Send shadow clones to neutralize the poison and recover the dead bodies. Once the poison on them is cleaned, read their memories, Ken. Everyone nodded and sent shadow clones to the base. The poison had begun leaking out from the opening to the underground base. The shadow clones used various methods to neutralize the poisonous gas in order to ensure that the surroundings weren't affected. While the poison was being dealt, Kakashi quickly wrote a report and summoned a dog and asked him to give it to Hiruzen. By then, the poison was finally dealt with. The shadow clones brought the dead bodies out of the bases one by one. Yamanaka Ken's shadow clone placed his hand on one of the dead ninja's head to read his memories. He inserted his chakra into the head. A moment later, his eyes widened. He muttered, "This?" Kakashi's clone asked, "What's the issue?" Ken's clone replied, "I can't read the memories." He quickly began checking the memories of the dead bodies that still had their brains intact. However, he couldn't read any memories. His face was very dark. He said, "The poison that Puppeteer used is the one that affects the neural system. Though I have the antidote that Lady Tsunade created, it works on alive humans and not dead ones, so I can't read any memories." The remaining clones were shocked. Fujin's clone paid attention to his words. Unfortunately, Ken didn't say anything about reading memories that he didn't already know. Ibiki's clone said, "No wonder he chose to explode the puppet. It wiped away all information. Now Konoha can't pursue Suna, even if we wanted to. They can just disown these ninjas, or try to pin the blame on us. In addition, we can't know what their exact plans were." Kakashi's clone nodded and said, "Fortunately, we know that there are 9 Suna ninjas in Fire Capital and 4 at other places." Ibiki's clone responded, "Yeah, but Fire Capital doesn't really have Jiraiya. We can't snuff them out. Finding them will be difficult unless they make a move." Genma's clone chuckled and said, "It's fine. We will let Lord Hokage worry about it." Involuntarily, Kakashi, Genma and Fujin's clones nodded while Ken and Yugo's clones looked at him with a deadpan expression. As no one had any ideas, Kakashi's clone sealed the dead bodies into a seal that Kakashi had handed him. Though the dead bodies didn't have any memories, the bodies themselves could provide a lot of information. All the remaining clones dispelled themselves while Kakashi's clone handed him the scroll before dispelling. After getting the memories, Kakashi sighed and said, "Let's wait here till Lord Hokage sends another squad with the mission to either create a new base or set up a parameter. Until then, let's keep an eye out. If any Suna ninja returns, we will neutralize him and check his memories." Everyone nodded. They dispersed into teams of 2 and kept an eye out for anyone who'd stumble there. A bit after midnight, Hiruzen received the message from Kakashi's summon. Since he was expecting the message, he stayed in his office. He read the report and analyzed. 1 ninja managed to escape, and he also sent a messenger bird. Looks like keeping this a secret from Suna won't be possible. We can't use this base to lure more ninjas from Suna and kill them. A frown formed on Hiruzen's face as the situation caused him a headache. According to Shikoku's plan, Kakashi's squad should have killed all the Suna ninjas. After reading their memories, they would impersonate them and lure more ninjas from Sonogakure and kill them, creating a death trap for Sonogakure by the time they realized. Their losses would have already exceeded the acceptable levels, and they would be forced to back off, he analyzed. Now Sonogakure has 2 choices, in addition to the squad that we killed earlier, and the 2 killed in the Fire Capital. 35 Suda ninjas have met their demise in the Land of Fire. They can either stop or they will attack using different routes, either by creating a new base, or more likely giving individual missions to every ninja as we did. Hiruzen sighed and muttered, "I should have sent stronger ninjas there, preferably a squad full of elite Junins." Unfortunately, such a squad was rather difficult to assemble. Most of the elite Junins in Konoha were clan leaders or retired from active duty. They wouldn't agree to participate in such a small matter. The few elite Junins he could deploy were already stretched thin due to other important matters. For instance, Rinjuro was currently in the Land of Water while Eagle was in the Land of Birds. He shook his head and thought, "Leave it, even that wouldn't have been a guaranteed success. They probably were on guard against such a situation. The result we wanted was too idealistic." I'm sure Shikaku has planned for such a situation. Without any hesitation, Hiruzen decided to pass the headache to Shikoku. He deployed 4 ambu squads to relieve Kakashi's squad and maintain an eye around the base. Unlike Hiruzen, a certain person couldn't pass his headache to someone else. Chapter 317 Suspicions. Despite it being a couple of hours past midnight, a loud banging sound could be heard. The man in the house grumpily woke up and walked to the door while muttering, "I should have made the door out of gold and created spikes on the surface. At least then no one would bang so loudly." He opened the door to see a messenger. The messenger quickly said, "Lord Kazekage, there is an extremely important matter." Without giving Rasa any opportunity to speak or respond, he handed him a scroll. Rasa opened the scroll and his eyes widened. However, soon a look of tiredness appeared on his face. He let out a sigh and said, "Ask the council to meet tomorrow morning." The messenger nodded and left. Rasa ignored Temari and Kankyo, who were woken up by the loud banging, and walked back while reading the scroll again. He thought, another loss against Konoha. The base was compromised. The status and the number of the ninjas in the base are still not known. We need to revamp our plans in the Land of Fire. Rasa had grown sick of the recent incidents with Konoha, ever since the day Fujin had stepped into the Land of Wind. He kept receiving one bad news after another. No matter how much he analyzed, calculated and planned, he was completely helpless in every instance. He even took action himself but never found an opponent to crush. Not wanting to ruin his sleep, he kept the matter aside and went back to bed. The next morning, every council member gathered in the council meeting room. Goza asked, "What's this meeting about?" Lord Kazekage. Rosa put forth 2 scrolls on the table and said, "I received these 2 scrolls. The first one is an emergency message sent from the secret base we established in the Land of Fire saying that the base was discovered by Konoha." The expressions of everyone in the room became grim. They all understood what getting exposed so deep within enemy territory would mean. Yoseki gritted his teeth and asked, "How did Konoha find out so quickly?" Ryusa added, "Yeah, we took so many measures while building that base. It shouldn't have been exposed so quickly." Rasa said, "It's due to Hideyoshi's squad that went missing." Rasa pointed at the other scroll and said, "I received this scroll a few hours later. It was sent by Takara Osamu. He said that Konoha ninjas disguised as Hideyoshi's squad and entered the base. They knew all the 3 codes and could imitate the chakra signatures well enough for Yosuke to not be suspicious." His words stunned the room once again. Ryusa asked, "How is that possible?" Goza had a grim expression. He asked, "Could Hideyoshi have betrayed us?" "There is no way Konoha would be able to pull something like this off without his assistance." Tejuro shook his head and said, "But why would he betray us? Even if he wanted to for some reason, his subordinates wouldn't want to, and they were strong enough to stop him." Guzzo replied, "If he didn't betray us, then that would mean that they ran into someone strong enough to not only kill them but also replicate their chakra signatures and prevent them from destroying their neural network." Unfortunately, he realized that Konoha had a few such ninjas. He grumbled, "Did they run into one of the Sanins?" He looked at Rasa and asked, "What happened to the base?" Rasa replied, "Before Osamu escaped, 24 of our ninjas had died and another self-destructed his puppet. He believes that everyone other than him might have died. As for Konoha, they attacked with just 6 ninjas. That is why he was able to run away, but he gathered 2 important pieces of intel." Rasa's face became very ugly as he said, "Hatak Kakashi was one of the attackers and was probably the leader of the group." The eyes of the council members widened. For the past couple of months, they absolutely hated that name. Not only did he kill dozens of their ninjas, but he hid so well that even 1,000 ninjas searching for him had to return empty-handed, and due to the volatile situation in the country, they couldn't even call those ninjas back to the village. This strained their already tight finances. Rasa continued, "And the one who impersonated Hideyoshi could use vacuum jutsus. He caught everyone off guard and killed 15 of the 28 ninjas in the base with his first attack." The council members were shocked again. Tejuro asked, "Did that bastard Danzo participate in this matter despite his old age?" Rasa shook his head and replied, "Probably not. Baki ended his meeting in the Land of Birds yesterday, though nothing significant was achieved and the meeting had a lot of outside interference. Owa gave him a piece of intel on the last day." Rasa opened a page on the bingo book and placed it on the table. The council members looked at it and had a peculiar look on their faces. Rasa noticed their confusion and said, "He is Suzuki Fujin. 2 years ago, just before we began mining in the Land of Hot Water, Kumo placed a bounty on this boy and stated that he could use vacuum jutsus, but he hasn't been seen outside Konoha since then. I guess he joined the Ambu. Right now he should be 14 years old. Igawatga ninjas encountered him during a mission and they gave his information to Bucky. They are sure that his strength is at elite Junin level and is very lethal, and he is extremely skilled at wind jutsus and wind vacuum technique. Onoki believed that he might have a hand to play in incidents that happened in our country earlier. The council wasn't surprised that Onoki knew about the incidents that had happened. But all were shocked to know that a 14-year-old Konoha ninja not only knew wind vacuum technique but was so good with it that his strength was considered to be at the elite Junin level. As for Fujin's identity, Kitsuchi looked into all available information on Konoha ninjas. His first suspect was Sarutari Asuma, but he didn't find any evidence of him using swords or vacuum jutsus. Though that could be hidden, Asuma had been sighted when the spectral swordsman was killing his targets, so Kitsuchi stopped suspecting him. After days of looking into thousands of ninjas, he didn't have any luck, but when he decided to check the bingo book, he was surprised to see a 12-year-old with a 20 million ryo bounty. On seeing that he could use vacuum jutsus, Fujin became the prime suspect in the identity of the spectral swordsman. Kitsuchi became even more suspicious when he found out that Fujin hadn't been on any mission after receiving the bounty. He shared his thoughts with Onoki, who agreed with him, despite not being 100% confident. Onoki thought, regardless of whether he is the spectral swordsman or not, he is a young talent. He must have done something big for that brat to be so pissed. But taking action will be difficult for now. I need to find someone else who will do the job for me. Onoki had heard that the issues in the Land of Wind were caused by a wind affinity ninja. So he passed the information to Suna to let them make the first move. After all, it didn't matter to him who killed Konoha's ninja, as long as he was dead. In the Sonogakure council room, Ryusa sighed and said, I had seen his bounty earlier, but I thought that Kumo was lying about his skills and he did something to offend them. Tojiro cursed, not only did those bastards steal Lord Second's jutsus, but they are now the only ones to have ninjas that can use the vacuum technique. Gazo thought for a bit and said, in addition, no information about him has leaked in the open apart from that vague information in the bounty. Having such power at merely 14 years means that he is sure to reach S rank when he matures, as expected of Konoha. Not only did they hype up the copy ninja to be the leader of the next generation, but they're also raising another in secret. That said, the culprit of the previous incident should still be the copy ninja. After all, from the reports, he was in a clutch. If it was this kid, then he would have used vacuum jutsus to deter or eliminate our ninjas. At the very least, he could have tried to eliminate our Jin Wekarik, but he didn't. Rasa nodded and said, I have the same opinion. But we need to keep an eye on him. In a war, an elite Junin that is an expert in wind release will be far more lethal when considering the vast number of fire affinity ninjas in Konoha. We were already concerned about Hokage's younger son, but even before he could reach his peak, Konoha already has someone else who is younger and probably stronger. Chapter 318 Dreaming Beyond One's Capability. The council members agreed with Rusa's analysis. There were two main reasons for this. The first was that Fujin never used any vacuum jutsu during his time in the Land of Wind. And secondly, on a subconscious level, they would rather want the damage done to them by someone who had gained fame, was the son of the White Fang and was taught by the fourth Heikage, rather than someone who had no fame and was merely 13 years old. Russ asked, leaving his matter aside, what are your thoughts on the operation in the Land of Fire? 2 of our ninjas were killed outside the Land of Fire. Now 27 are presumed dead here, and if Hideyashi's squad is assumed dead, then our total losses reach 35 ninjas. 1 elite Junin, 16 Junins and 18 Chunings. The entire room went silent. Such losses would make their hearts ache even if it was wartime. After some time, Gazo broke the silence by saying, adding the previous losses, we have now lost 2 elite Junins and over 100 ninjas in total. Ryusa sighed and muttered, at this rate, we might have been better off not acting against Konoha. Tojiro immediately rebuked him and shouted, are you crazy? Even if we didn't, we would have suffered the same losses in the future. Don't forget the stuff that Danzo keeps pulling in the dark. Ryusa looked back at him and said, stop yelling and tell us a good plan if you think this was such a good idea. Tojiro snorted and said, of course, we have to continue attacking. This time, we should send more elite Junins. If the base had 3-4 elite Junins, then Konoha's plot would have backfired, and instead, Hatak Kakashi and Satsuki Fujin would have died. We need to make Konoha feel the pain for daring to scheme against us. Ryusa replied, we still don't know how Hideyashi's squad was dealt with, and the base we created this time was destroyed after being attacked by just the copy ninja. What if the Sanins attack next time? All 4 elite Junins will die if they do. Can you accept the responsibility for such a loss? Obviously, Tojuro won't claim responsibility for such a matter, he thought. Why is this bastard pushing the matter on me? Besides, even if Konai killed 4 more elite Junins and a few dozen Junins, so what? It's not like they will dare to invade our country. The only thing that will happen is that Rusa's position will become very shaky, and with numerous elite Junins out of the way, I will have a good chance to become the 5th Kazi Kage, he replied. Then do you want to cower and tell Konoha that Suna is weak and they can walk over us anytime without any consequences? As for the responsibility, did you forget that we still have Lord Kazi Kage to protect us? Ryusa was about to argue back when Goza said, "That's enough, you two. Don't make a mockery of the council." Hearing his words, the two stopped arguing. Goza said, "Tojuro is right. We have to retaliate. Otherwise, we will look weak and will invite stronger attacks in the future. But deploying elite Junins is too risky, so is creating another base in the Land of Fire. We should deploy ninjas individually with specific missions, without letting them know about other ninjas and their missions. This way, even if someone is caught, they can't leak intelligence about others. So our losses won't suddenly become very high." Rasa nodded and asked, "Any objections to it?" No one said anything. Rasa said, "All right, we will be deploying ninjas individually to target the nobles in the Land of Fire. In addition, send a message to our current spies to dig for more information on Suzuki Fujin. If possible, keep track of his movements too, but don't do that if it risks their cover. And ask Seijo to stop looking for the copy ninja, and instead focus entirely on rebuilding the citizens' faith into Sunagakure." Everyone nodded and left the room, leaving Rasa alone in the room. Rasa stayed seated with his hands on the desk while in deep contemplation. After a few minutes, he let out a sigh and thought. Konoha ended the 3rd Great Ninja War in a very strong position, leaving the rest of the villages helpless against their might. Fortunately, they suffered multiple setbacks after the war ended, though I wasn't able to take advantage when the Nine-Tails attacked and killed the 4th Hokage, or when Orochimaru betrayed them. The Uchiha massacre provided us with a good opportunity. I began taking steps to break our alliance with Konoha and began preparing for a war against them in secret. Though I expected Konoha to catch wind of my intentions and retaliate, I didn't expect it to be so strong. It's almost as if the Uchiha massacre didn't weaken them and instead strengthened them. And despite such extreme actions, they don't seem to be worried about us starting a war. The important question is, Rasa became very serious as he contemplated. Is Hiruzen thinking that I won't dare to start a war, or is he so confident in Konoha's younger generation that he doesn't mind a war? Thinking about the younger generation, Rasa began getting a headache. He thought, ever since the 1st Great Ninja War, Konoha always had excellent youngsters who quickly filled the shoes left by their predecessors. In fact, they have had the next generation step up even when their previous generation was still at its peak. Other nations are lucky to have 1 or 2 S-rank ninjas in every generation. In fact, Iwa hasn't had a non-Jinwekuric S-rank ninja since Onoki, but Konoha produces S-ranks every decade. If Hiruzen's actions are due to his confidence in his younger generation, then should I even be launching a war? Rasa had been thinking of starting a short war with Konoha for more than a couple of years. However, the recent losses Suna suffered against Konoha made him rethink his plan. After all, he had already lost one big war in the past. In order to ensure that he maintained his position, he even got rid of the only other rank S ninja in Suno's ranks from his generation. After thinking for a long time, he concluded, no, right now is the best time. The Sanins barely stay in the village, all that leaves is an old Hiruzen and an injured Danzo. Though Hatak Kakashi's fame exceeds even the Sanins at his age in terms of accomplishments, he is lacking, and if I compare it to Minato or his father, then it's not even comparable. He probably needs another 6-8 years to reach my level. As for this new kid, he is still at the elite Junin level. He will need even longer. As long as I make a move within the next 5 years, I will have a good chance, but the attack will have to be a sneak attack, and it needs to be done at an accurate time. If I attack directly, then the Konoha armies will crush us just like the last war, and if I attack when the Sanins are nearby, I will have to face 2 or more S-ranked ninjas by myself. The best time would be to attack Hiruzen when the Sanins aren't in the village. Once I kill him, we can cause some damage to Konoha and retreat. Then even if the 2 Sanins return to Konoha, they will be helpless to do anything to me. They won't dare to march in the desert, and would need to keep an eye on Kumo, and the Wind Daimyo will be helpless as well. That war will leave him no choice but to give us all the missions, But there are two main issues. Can I kill Hiruzen with a sneak attack? And what if the Sanins hide waiting for me to make a move? Russa analyzed the answers to both of his questions. Finally, he decided, as long as I catch him by surprise, I can kill Hiruzen. After all, he is far past his prime. But the main issue is Jaya and Tsunade. I need someone to keep them in check. An S-rank ally. Russa thought for some time, but couldn't think of anyone suitable. He thought, the only one that comes to mind is Kyo, but she is way past her prime. She lost to Tsunade in the last war. This time, she might not be able to even put up a challenge. He thought of the remaining Kages but immediately removed that thought. In the end, he decided, I need to find a proper ally for the sneak attack. I will wait till I find one. If I don't find any, then I will do my sneak attack after 5 years. I will have to depend on Shikaku to divert the Sanins or other strong fighters. In the meantime, I need to strengthen a few subordinates that are loyal to me. I will need a few elite Junins to block the clan leaders in Konoha. Unlike the rest of the council, Russa had given up on the hopes of achieving any success in their current campaign against Konoha. Instead, he directly began preparing for a war against a village that had 3 times more S-rank ninjas. Chapter 319 Wind-style Genjutsu. The 4 ambush squads dispatched by Hiruzen reached the base created by Sunagakure and took over the command from Kakashi. Kakashi and the rest began returning to Konoha. By noon, they were back in the village, returning in exactly 24 hours. They met Hiruzen, handed him the scroll of the dead bodies, and informed him about the poison. Hiruzen let out a sigh and thought, other than elimination, this mission has failed on all parameters. Oh well, I'm sure that Shikaku has considered this situation as well. Understanding the importance of the mental health of a cage, Hiruzen didn't bother planning for even a second before tossing another headache over to Shikoku. He said, all right, you did a good job in eliminating the infiltrators. I miscalculated their strength and didn't think they would fight back so vigorously. Fujin, stay back. Others can leave. Other than Fujin, the rest left. Hiruzen tossed a scroll at Fujin and said, this scroll has the Genjutsu that you requested. I'll let you take a week off to master them. On the 8th day, come to my office at dawn. We will be having a couple more diplomatic missions. Burn the scroll after you are done and don't use them lightly. Fujin nodded. He understood that Hiruzen wanted to keep the Ambo guards in the dark regarding the exact matter. He said, thank you, Grandpa. I'll begin working on them right away. Hiruzen nodded. Fujin kept the scroll and walked out while thinking. It took so long for them to read Susumu's memories. Normally the memories get checked within a day. Did Hiruzen keep them until today? But I don't see any reason for him to do that. I guess reading memories to extract jutsus is a more difficult task, or perhaps he wanted to check each and every memory before giving me the scroll in order to remove any issues or dangers in the jutsus or that might arise while learning them. While Fujin headed to his home, Hiruzen entered Shikaku's office and closed the door. Shikaku looked at Hiruzen and had a bad feeling. He muttered to himself, this look, he's going to dump another troublesome task on my head. Hiruzen said. Kakashi's group returned. Their enemy used poison to ruin the neural network in dead people. The only one who wasn't poisoned by it had his head destroyed by earth spikes, so we can't read any memories from them. Shikaku raised his eyebrow and said, I can understand a message being sent and someone escaping. But how did they fail so badly? Who did you send? Hiruzen replied, Kakashi, Fujin, Ibiki, Junma, Yugo and Ken. A look of annoyance appeared on Shikaku's face. He muttered, why did you send such a weak squad? I recommended sending at least 4 elite Junins and 2 who are close to that level. Hiruzen shrugged and said, I know, but you didn't arrange to have that many elite Junins available. I could just make do with the ones available. Shikaku was stunned by the reply. He thought, since when is arranging ninjas my job? It's your job as the Hokage to assign missions and move the ninjas around. Before he could reply, Hiruzen said, Suna will soon start sending ninjas one by one in our country, make plans to eliminate them. He turned around and sighed, I have a few meetings to attend, so I will leave this matter in your capable hands. Shikaku watched as Hiruzen disappeared from his office without a hint of apology. His body slumped on his desk as he muttered, what a troublesome old man. If he had informed me earlier, I'd have made Iniuchi and Choza go instead of Ken and Yuga. Now I have to deal with another troublesome mess. While Shikaku was sulking, Fujin reached his home. He entered the basement and began reading the information in the scroll. In a few minutes, a look of admiration appeared on Fujin's face. He thought, this Susumu guy was a genius. Such precise, delicate but stealthy use of wind chakra. He would first hide his chakra from being sensed so that no one would realize the extremely minute amounts of chakra he emitted from his body. The chakra would turn into harmless winds and slowly enter his target's body as they breathe the air. Right when the target is about to use a jutsu, he uses his chakra in his opponent's body to influence the opponent's chakra and make him fall into a genjutsu. And this genjutsu has only two effects. One, it will cause the jutsu to fail, and secondly, it will make the opponent think that he has successfully used the jutsu. But other than this, there is nothing that this technique does. The winds pose no threat, and the chakra that infiltrates the opponent's body also doesn't pose any threat apart from being able to cast a low-level genjutsu. This is the ingenious part. Most experienced ninjas have a keen sense of danger, but since this jutsu doesn't pose any threat, the ninja won't feel any danger. The real danger comes from the jutsu that are aimed at the opponent. For instance, if I hadn't sensed my chakra being influenced and used body flicker against Gara, I'd have thought that I moved away when I hadn't. His sand would have killed or at least gravely injured me, and the jutsu is so stealthy that even an experienced sensor would have difficulty sensing it unless he is actively looking for it, and the fact that it doesn't need any hand signs adds to the stealth part. If I wasn't on extreme alert due to being so deep in enemy territory and being heavily outnumbered, even I might have trouble detecting it. Fujin was extremely impressed by Susumu's ingenuity. However, he was more pleased with another aspect. While most other ninjas might struggle on the very first step, this technique was much simpler to learn for someone like him, who spent the majority of his time training wind jutsus and improving his chakra control. Fujin closed his eyes. A blue aura appeared around him. He controlled the chakra and began slowly emitting it in the air. As the chakra left his body, it transformed into wind and mixed with the air in the basement. Fujin realized, I see, this is also excellent for sensing. Though the range is low, the accuracy is remarkable. I doubt anyone would be able to hide when I use this technique. I guess killing him without Gara's distraction wouldn't have been possible. Fujin turned his attention back towards the technique and analyzed. Regardless, I am using a lot of chakra. I have to emit the chakra into the air without exerting any externally. The chakra emitted should be so low that no one should grow suspicious. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 4 shadow clones appeared around Fujin. All 4 began practicing the art of emitting chakra into the air and converting it into wind while suppressing their chakra as low as possible. In the next hour, all 5 made rapid progress. Finally, an hour later, Fujin dismissed his shadow clones. He got a slight headache due to the memories he received. As all the memories and experiences mixed together, a smile formed on Fujin's face. One of his clones had managed to successfully learn the jutsu. Fujin began emitting chakra into the air. Slowly, his chakra spread in the entire basement, and the density of the chakra was so low that other ninjas wouldn't be able to feel it unless they activated their chakra field or other abilities that could sense chakra. Fujin thought, first step achieved, and since the amount of chakra that I had to emit was so low, I still have most of my chakra. The next step is to send this chakra into the opponent's chakra network. He created 1 shadow clone and sat on the ground. His clone nodded and emitted his chakra into the air. It engulfed Fujin's position and entered him as he breathed in the air. However, a frown formed on Fujin's face. He said, I can feel the chakra entering my system. The clone thought for a bit and said, I see, though I emitted the chakra in the right way, I tried forcing it into your body. I'll try it again. Fujin nodded. His chakra suddenly flared and absorbed the chakra that his clone had inserted into his chakra network. Since the chakra of the clone belonged to him, he had no issue in doing it. The clone began emitting chakra once again. This time, he didn't bother focusing it around Fujin, and instead, just let the winds flow. As Fujin continued breathing, chakra slowly entered his chakra network. Over the next minute, Fujin continued inhaling the chakra. His clone observed Fujin and thought, this should be enough. A double vision jutsu. Suddenly, Fujin began seeing 2 clones in front of him. He disrupted his chakra and said, that worked. The last part is stopping me from using my jutsus. The clone nodded and said, let's fight. Chapter 320 Plans for a signature jutsu. Fujin nodded and stood up as his clone continued emitting chakra in the air. Fujin thought, the process is still quite slow. Susumu was able to influence my chakra almost instantaneously. But considering that he was waiting to ambush me, he might have set up the battlefield before I encountered his group. Fujin's clone said, I am ready. Almost instantly, Fujin began kneading his chakra. Fire release great fireball jutsu. He exhaled a small fireball at his clone. His clone immediately moved backwards and raised 2 fingers. Wind began flowing around them. Wind release blade of wind jutsu. Multiple blades of wind cut apart the fireball and dispersed the heat in the basement. He let out a sigh and dispelled himself. Fujin received his clone's memories and began analyzing. I see, his genjutsu failed because he had too little chakra in my body. No, a more precise way of saying it would be that he couldn't cast the genjutsu with such less chakra. I guess I first need to learn how to cast this genjutsu properly, and then slowly decrease the amount of chakra I need to cast this genjutsu. Once it reaches the required level, I will integrate it into this technique. Now, who should I experiment the genjutsu on? Fujin thought for a bit. His first thought was Goro, but he shook his head and thought, no, the flying saber were too sensitive to wind and chakra. They will easily detect my attempts, and influencing nature chakra with normal chakra is difficult. Normal gentastis don't even work on them. And since Hiruzen asked me to keep this technique a secret, I can't ask for any other Kanuta ninja to aid me. I guess I'll have to keep having my clones use the genjutsu on me. Oh well, it should be good training to improve my alertness against any foreign chakra entering my body. Fujin created a shadow clone and continued his training. In 3 days, he mastered the genjutsu and integrated it with the remaining technique. His clone kept casting the genjutsu on him until he had 100% accuracy. Of course, this was when Fujin didn't try to disrupt his chakra. A smile appeared on Fujin's face as he muttered, another deadly technique down. This combined with vacuum bullets or my sword is a deadly combination. Apart from Jin Hyukaris and Dotu's users, very few might be able to withstand this combination, and it still has some scope for improvement. For instance, Susumu only used it to stop opponents from using jutsu, but I should improve it to stop opponents from even moving. I will just have to induce a genjutsu that would make my opponent think that he has moved when he hasn't. But though this jutsu is strong, its effectiveness would depend on whether my opponent knows that I can do this or not. If they do, then they will be on alert. And I don't expect that an alert rank S ninja will fall to this. They might even be able to use jutsus by frequently disrupting their chakra. Fujin thought for a bit about how to use this jutsu effectively against rank S ninjas, but he couldn't come up with an idea. He shook his head and thought, leave it, I have just learnt this technique, I'll get ideas to improve as I use it in real combat. Regardless, this jutsu gave me a few good ideas. Until now, the wind jutsus I use take effect instantaneously apart from wind clone, wind dragon and wind gill wolf jutsus, which can last for a longer time and are more versatile, but this technique has got me thinking. Fujin focused his chakra once again, a blue aura appeared around him and a vast amount of chakra was emitted into the air. Transforming into winds, Fujin raised his hand and pointed his palm at the wind. He exerted control over the wind. However, he couldn't exert much control over them. A frown appeared on his face as he exerted more chakra. Soon, he diverted the winds towards a nearby tree. The winds passed the tree like a gentle breeze. Fujin sighed and muttered, this is difficult. He thought, using the same concept, I want to emit my chakra into the air, transform it into the wind and then use that to attack my enemies. But to do that, I'll need three things. The first is that I need to have the ability to make these winds sharp. Otherwise, it's completely useless. Next, I need to be able to control the direction of the winds so that I can accurately hit my target. And thirdly, I need the ability to speed up the sharp winds at will. But I am not able to do the first at all, and the other two are at a very low level. Fujin analyzed his situation. After all, he knew a lot of wind jutsus. The things they could do were several times more complicated and devastating, so he didn't understand why he couldn't create what he envisioned. But soon it clicked. He realized, I see, it's because my jutsu doesn't have any hand seals. For a jutsu to be effective, chakra had to be manipulated in a very precise method. Hand seals were the guide to aid in that process, but Fujin's idea was all over the place. Creating hand seals for it would be a very difficult and time-consuming process. He shook his head and thought, I can't take the traditional route. It will need years to figure out the correct hand seals and their order, and the number of hand seals will be ridiculously high due to how complex the jutsu is. And for the jutsu to be effective, stealth is essential, so I will have to reduce the hand seals to 0 after creating the jutsu. That alone will need several months. The time I don't have and can't afford to spend on just one jutsu with limited uses. More than the jutsu, what excites me is its potential. As my chakra grows and my control over the wind improves, this method could become my main method of fighting. In the future, this style of combat might be what I am identified with, but that won't happen if it is limited to a single jutsu. I will have to come up with an unconventional way to train this jutsu, kinda like the 3 steps needed to learn the Rasenjun. Rasenjun, after learning to just pop the balloon, is very weak. After popping the rubber ball, it becomes more potent but has limited usability. And at stage 3 it is a rank A jutsu, which can be a signature jutsu for rank S ninjas. My jutsu will have to go through some similar stages. Fujin made up his mind. However, he soon fell into another dilemma. He muttered, I can't work on this jutsu and learn Fuin jutsu at the same time. Fujin had to choose between the two. After a long struggle, Fujin let out a sigh and decided, I'll stick to Fuin jutsu for now. Though this idea is cool, I can still make do with infinite breakthrough and vacuum attacks. But Fuin jutsu is my hope to stand out even among the S ranks. Besides, I doubt Flying Thunder God can be learnt quickly. I can train for this jutsu when I reach a roadblock on Flying Thunder God training. He decided to go out for dinner. En route, he couldn't help but think, it sucks that I don't have as much chakra as Naruto. I could have achieved so much with that amount of chakra and recovery speed. Though his chakra reserves were exceptional, they weren't even comparable to the weakest Jinwekuric. Unfortunately, there was nothing Fujin could do regarding it. It wasn't as if Tailed Beast would fall from the sky. Let itself be sealed in him and obediently provide him chakra. Fujin rested for the day and began focusing on Fuin jutsu the day after. On the appointed day, Fujin arrived at Hiruzen's office. After interacting with him for a bit, Fujin sat quietly as he observed how Hiruzen interacted with the diplomats and a few clan leaders on what should be negotiated with the land of river and the land of grass. After a few hours of discussion, Hiruzen, his amber guards Fujin, Aburami Shibi and Kurama Illumi left the village on the negotiating mission. The negotiations with the two countries went very similar to the negotiations Fujin had seen earlier, just the resources traded were changed. Of course, Hiruzen did ask for elemental crystals. To Fujin's surprise, despite Konoha's relationship with them not being as good as with the land of tea or noodles, they provided Hiruzen with more crystals than those countries. However, after thinking for a bit, the reason was obvious. Fujin realized, ever since my promotion mission, Suna ninjas must be moving around erratically. They even dared to create a base in the land of fire. The land of river should be nervous about these movements. As for the land of grass, that's even more obvious. Ayua's Jinwekuric entered the country and used a tailed beast bomb very close to a town. This old fox is very good at extracting benefits. He waited until the right moment to visit these two countries and extracted the maximum benefit from them. Unlike the time before, they didn't encounter any attacks and returned back to the village after a 3-day-long trip. Following the trip, Fujin got busy with his amber duties. Eagle assigned his team missions at regular intervals. Fortunately, none of their missions went awry. 3 months passed by in this manner. Though the villages were tense, no major issues flared up until one fateful day. The land of water Rinjuro stood while looking in a direction with a solemn face. He sighed softly. I bit off more than I could chew. A wave of lava was heading straight at his team.